6'7".
6'7".
Yeah.
Oh wait, he's 6'7".
That's crazy.
I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't like a big geography guy.
It could be so fun and so yee, and then all of a sudden it can be like, man, this is just awful, and it's just the worst feeling in the world.
Welcome into Overtime, presented by Perfection One. I'm John Bruce, alongside Shayne Combs. Welcome to episode 101 of Southern Ohio Sports Authority's flagship podcast show. Shayne, how are you doing?
Doing real well. Enjoyed the 100th show there. Some cool feedback on the social media. I know we had used an example of the Adena athletic boosters. There's obviously more out there that do that. We just use that as an example and how it helps promote. And week in, week out, you never know when we're sitting here talking for an hour and a half, 2 hours, what's going to really hit. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we hope that people enjoy all of it in terms of the part from your timestamps that they use. But it seems like there's always something each week that kind of triggers some big time discussion, and that was one last week that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, and it's always good to get any feedback that we can, any discussion, and as Shayne said, if you wonder about the timestamp, it's in the description below. We do a timestamp for each and every topic that we discuss throughout the episodes. And if you want to skip to softball, you can see below when we talk about softball. If you want to hear us talk about the entire episode, which we would love, but we know with the amount of schools that we cover in our SOSA coverage area that you're probably not going to be interested in every single one of those leagues and everything. And when we go division by division, Division 7 school may not be interested in Division 3 schools. So we know that. So that's why we do the timestamps and try to help out as much as possible. So, Shayne, how was your weekend? I know we're filming this on a Monday, so it's going to go out on Tuesday, but how was your weekend?
Oh, it was outstanding. Mother's Day weekend, enjoyed spending some time with Mom and the family there, and then right back at it today. We're counting down the days at school there, but at the same time, it's an exciting time because we're into spring postseason, pretty much in all the sports, and that's kind of a balance for spring coaches because kids are seeing that summer break, but you're trying to keep them focused on what's going on there in terms of what your team's trying to accomplish down the stretch.
Yeah, there's a lot of big accomplishments still available for teams across the area, whether it's softball, whether it's baseball. We don't have a ton of lacrosse, but we got track. League meets are coming up this week with the district meets coming up next week. So pretty exciting time right now in Southeast Ohio and really all over. And, we kind of talked about this a little bit at different times. We talked about with prom. You love prom.
I do love prom.
Yeah, we had Mother's Day, so we pushed this back a day. There's Easter in the spring. How, as a baseball coach, for as long as you coached, how were you able to kind of navigate the just general absurdity of, hey, in the fall you have 10 weeks where there's one holiday and it doesn't really break up anything from what you do, where this can break up a lot of different things.
It can, and you try to be real consistent. You try to communicate up front. You try to get a feel for, each team's a little bit different, if I'm being honest. Like, you try to get a feel for how the schedule's going to, we joked about prom a couple weeks ago, but you try to figure out when that's going to be. You try to figure out how the league is going to play, like schedule-wise. How are they going to navigate around the Easter holiday and so forth? When does it fall? Does it fall early in the year, late in the year? Here's another one I'll throw in since it's this time of year is graduation. Mm-hmm. So you have a lot of seniors involved in spring sports, keeping them focused down the stretch because they're obviously excited to step into that chapter of their life, and you're wanting them to hang on there a few more weeks, hopefully, if you make a nice tournament run. That's a dynamic where you get into some senior skip days. They don't want to be in class. They graduate, and then all of a sudden, like a lot of people are going to graduate this Sunday, and then what? You know what I mean? Right. Like, you're trying to keep them focused as you go into spring. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of different things. I think the answer to your question is you try to be consistent. You try to be open-minded. You try to learn from all of the different experiences you go through to put the best schedule in place to help your kids be successful.
Yeah, and then also with some of the smaller schools, also senior trips during the school year. I know, like, we saw Huntington in here a few Sundays back before the season started, and they were in here hitting. There were no seniors because they were on their senior trip. Now that was before the season officially started, so that it didn't interfere as much. But how would you have dealt with that? Did your school ever do that during?
We did not, and I know Huntington has done that forever.
Yeah.
I mean, throughout my entire coaching career, they now, to their credit, they placed it right in between winter and spring. I'm sure the spring coaches didn't love it at that time, but at least it was consistent. And they knew it was coming, and it wasn't going to impact their regular season. So I'm sure that was, at least a somewhat good scheduling thing. No, I've not really had it. Obviously, once they graduate, they could take off and go. I've had a couple kids individually make some choices over the years, and families have made some decisions over the years where we've advanced late into the tournament. And obviously, I'm not going to get into those things here on the air, but like those are decisions as a coach you get faced with, and you just have to react to those individual things.
Yeah, you just had to handle that as you want to hope that everyone is kind of on the same page. But sometimes, like I know, sometimes you schedule trips and then all of a sudden the season gets pushed back a week. And then you make it a little bit further than you expect, and you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Like, what do we do in that situation? And I know that some different people have dealt with
Different
that.
people have different opinions. Some people are more excited about making the regional tournament than others.
Exactly. So, and then we also, we filmed this here inside the Chillicothe Sports Card Studio, which is also inside the SOSA dugout in downtown Chillicothe. We got some people in the dugout right now hitting at the 4 o'clock hour. There'll be some individual lessons coming in, 5 to 7, and then some more people coming in late tonight as well. So pretty busy as a whole. But remember to check out sosaohio.com/the dugout or sosadugout.com to find out when you can book your times and talk to somebody who's been here. I mean, if you talk to somebody who's been here, they're probably going to speak really highly of it overall. And just overall, it's been a really nice thing for our community. But at the same time, I want to hope that it's going to continue to help our area get better baseball and softball.
I would think so. I've heard zero negative comments. I mean, I was going to say the maybe the least amount of feedback might be, hey, that was awesome. Now, I have more access to some different places I can hit and work during the year, but when needed, man, I'd highly recommend that type of thing. You know what I mean? So, like, that's why I've been consistent on saying what you really owe to yourself is to try it once so that you know what resource is available to you when you do need it.
Yeah, it's an outstanding resource for our area. We were able to get the Piketon softball team in here. If you haven't seen the Hainstoll Healthcare Coaches Call-In Show from last week, we had a dog in here get right in here, get adjusted. That was something. And then we had a fish, also Coke Butter Cheese of the Piketon softball team. They brought the fish in, which found out Dr. Haynes cannot adjust a fish. Could adjust a dolphin. It's a mammal, but not just your everyday run-of-the-mill fish.
Right.
So that's...
See, even when you think you're just tuning in for sports, you get educated on more than you ever imagined.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. This coming week will be our finale of the Hainstoll Healthcare Coaches College Show for the school year, which will be coming up on the 17th. So check that out. I think we may have another mammal in here at that time. That one could be ridiculous. But if you missed that episode, some really good interviews with the Piketon softball team in there as well. That's also time-stamped and here on the YouTube channel. Especially with right now, we have a little bit of downtime with the tournament coming up, and then it spreads out a whole lot now as opposed to what it felt like. You used to do the draw, you finish the season on a Friday or Saturday, and then you played maybe on a Monday, and then that sectional week was over, and then you go right into districts, and then regional, and then state. Now it's, we got a long time, and then we play one game, and then the teams that got advanced are already on to the district semifinal level, and it's kind of, it is what it is. It's just kind of how the timing is and when things are open and available. But check out the baseball softball brackets. They're out, sedab.org, which is for the Southeast District. You can see all of those. A lot of the different media outlets have shared how to get to those. And whenever we talk about the brackets, I know you coached for a few years. You went from seeing in person to online. Now, softball has went to RPI. Did you coach basketball when it
Coach
went to
basketball and RPI.
Okay. Yeah, so you've seen all three. I've been in the in-person meetings. I was coaching when we were online. I was not a part of it when we went to online or RPI. But what are your thoughts? What is the best way to do it? In person, online, RPI, or some sort of mix?
I would probably answer this question by using the chronological order that you talked about. I always feel like whenever you're doing something, you always want to be open-minded to, why do we do it that way? Well, if the answer is because we've always done it that way, well, is that right or wrong? You know what I mean? And so you always want to take a look, and sometimes you can try things and you can decide if it goes well, and then you can adjust. So as you said, forever and a day, we were in person. We would go in and you talk about your team, and you would at least have to, if you were going to, I don't know, for lack of a better word,
stick it to
cheat a team, right? Like if you were going to maybe not vote with what a lot of people would deem the highest level of integrity. Now, again, your opinion's your opinion, but there's certain things I think that are up for debate. You at least had to be in a room, and you at least had to do it in person in front of those coaches. Now, when we went to online voting and things like that, now all of a sudden you're trying to type these bios. You're trying to explain the year that your teams had, who you beat, who beat you, some of the stretches of the season you went through, and people may or may not really read those or understand those. Then, if they go to vote, you get a printout of who voted what, but at the end of the day, some of these coaches you may not see in person more than once or twice an entire year. It became, in my opinion, a worse way to do it. Now, did it save you a Sunday afternoon from driving to who knows where and spending 3 or 4 hours to do it? Maybe. But the question you're asking me, is it better? No, it wasn't. So now when we go to the RPI, is it better than in person? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to be consistent with my basketball answer. Now, like any new thing, does the form? Remember, you and I had this. I don't remember the show number because it all runs together now. Right. But back in the winter here on our YouTube channel, we talked about this very thing in basketball, and we debated what the formula should be. There were certain things in the formula that we thought maybe should have less weight than others, but I still say the RPI is the way to go. So I would answer that the RPI, in my opinion, is by far the best way to go. Once you get to that, now the new debate is, how do we continue to tweak that system to make it as fair as possible? Well, again, it's going to take some time because it's new. We were doing it that other way forever, and it wasn't the greatest format. So I would say be patient with this and see if we can't get, as I open up the bracket, just like in basketball, of say softball, okay? I open up the basketball brackets, open up softball. Yeah, are there a couple ones that jump out at me, a seed here, a seed there? But for the most part, they're not that far off. Right. And what I love about it is, John, if you and your AD know the formula and going in what scores well, what doesn't score well, then there's the rules of the game. Play the game, right? And your scheduling and so forth. And I think it can go a long way in helping you.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. So here's another thing. And there's, so you have the Southwest, Central, Northwest, Northeast, East, and then the Southeast. So that's 5 different areas, right? Yeah, 6 different. Six.
Yeah, 6.
So there's 6 different places. Why is the Southeast the only ones that do it by the NCAA tournament bracket? So, would it be better, even if it was online, no RPI, if I vote, I don't know, Shawnee State 1, and you vote Shawnee State 4, however, but Shawnee State ends up winning the 2, well, then they can pick where they want to go on the bracket. Would you like that better if it was online, where at least maybe if, well, I'll use Zane Trace as an example. They get voted as the 4. If they could decide where they wanted to go, do you think that would even out a little bit of that online voting if they wanted to do online? If at least you still get to pick your own path.
I would say again, there's a lot of logistics and a lot of moving parts there, especially if you're not going to be in person.
Yeah.
But I would say anything that benefits you from getting a better seed, I'm probably open-minded to. You know what I'm saying? So, like, if you're telling me this team is the 1 seed, well, I think they should have every advantage possible before one pitch has been thrown that to be as successful as they can be, like in terms of where they're at on the bracket, who they're playing, when they're playing. Maybe that matters to them, right? What time they play, what day they play, all of those different things. And then as you go down the seeding, so forth. I know some formats in the past had the old pill system where you do that on some of the top seeds, but then maybe the other seeds just go where they go. I'm not against that because, again, I think my philosophy has always been consistent in anything that gives the best teams the best opportunities. I think that's what they've earned.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I just think that there's got to be some ways to help benefit those teams a little bit more.
Yep.
And that's been my biggest issue with not doing it that draw system where I mentioned it later in my notes. So when we're going to talk about the tournament draw a little bit, West Jefferson in Division 6 is one of the best teams.
Good team.
One of the best teams in the state. Well, the Central has 2 different districts. They could choose the district that would come here and play in the Southeast, which probably would be over at Lancaster, which is typically where Division 6 has been. Probably at Lancaster, Logan, somewhere in there. Or they could go to the Southwest and play in the Cincinnati area. Well, they know coming to this district is either the winner of Berlin Highland and Toronto, who are 2 of probably the top 5 teams in Division 6 in the state. Well, West Jefferson, who's one of the top 5 teams in Division 6, said, no, we'll go to the Southwest instead. Like, I like that option of, and I know that softball, you're able to choose that in a way.
Yep.
Like Piketon for softball, they were the 3 seed, so they were kind of put into that other area. But if Wheelersburg or Meggs wanted to go to the other area, which would be the Southwest, they could have gone.
Right.
They had that option.
We went over that in basketball as well. Yep.
Yeah, so you have that option, and that's why Fairland was able to go to the Southwest and girls basketball and got to the Final Four.
Right.
If you see which way gives you the best chance, gives your team the best chance, I think it should be up to the coaches.
No, I agree. And like I said, anything that you tell me this is going to give more of an advantage to the higher seeds, I'm probably going to be open-minded to trying it.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. So just that's one of the things we'll look at throughout this year, and we'll talk about, like, will baseball go to the RPI, or are they going to stick with how they want to do it, because it does come down to how the coaches want to do it. I would love to see it, but that's statewide is not going to the RPI like every other sport is, which also I would love to see it be uniform, but as we talked about in basketball, you got to figure out the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you are going to go out,
I think the thing that scares baseball coaches the most, and I'm speaking on quite a bit of experience here, but I guess I don't know this as a fact. So this is more of an opinion than it is a fact. I think what concerns baseball coaches the most, even more so than softball, and especially more than basketball or these other teams, is there's this theory, which isn't a bad one, of when my number 1 is on the mound, this is who I am. When my number 2 is on the mound, this is who I am. Now, a lot of those other games could get down to my 4 and 5 and 6 being on the mound. That might be a misleading thing in terms of how we vote. So coaches can take that into consideration to vote. What I would argue is I don't know how many coaches take that into consideration. Right. I think that they, you know what I'm saying? So, like, I think that's why we have a lot of really dangerous 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 seeds out there in baseball because of the kid that's going to be throwing for that team come tournament time. But that's the only thing that I have heard over the years in terms of they think the RPI takes the whole body of work, and they argue that in baseball they don't know if that's what should be judged. I don't know if I agree with that or not, because I think at the end of the day, your team is your entire team. I understand the thought of the pitcher, but again, your team is the whole body of the 27 games that you play.
So you're telling me in Major League Baseball, if Paul Skeens pitches 32 times, the Pirates should only be judged based off of those 32 times, according to some
a great analogy.
Yeah, because no, it's the entire team.
Even though you go to the playoffs, he's going to probably pitch at least 2, if not 3 games in a 7-game series if it goes that far.
Right.
It's still your team is your team. So I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just trying to give some perspective on what is out there in the baseball world.
Yeah, and I, in my experience, I completely agree with you on that, because that's typically what you see in a lot of different ways as well. So let's move on. We're going to move on to baseball, and we're going to talk about the tournament draw. But as we talk about the tournament draw, we are going to talk about a lot of different things within that as well. So let's start off with Division III. In Division III, I think you have it pulled up right now. Jackson, the FAC champion, is the 1 seed. The 2 seed would be Miami Trace. 3 would be Sheridan. 4, the TVC Ohio champion, is Athens, followed by the 5 with Chillicothe. I guess we can just go through the entire thing because there's only 8 teams in it. But just overall, it's a pretty dangerous bracket. You got the 6 is Hillsborough, 7 is Warren, and 8 is Marietta. So Marietta, I think, kind of gets a little bit. Oh, Warren at Miami Trace is one of those. I was looking this up today on the driving distances for those home games. So some of them are worse than others. You know how I like to bring that up. But one of the things, let's start with just talking about some of the teams in this bracket, starting with Jackson, the FAC champions. They finished 9-1 in the FAC. Miami Trace gets the 2 seed. They finish at 8-2 in the FAC. Ryan Simons for Jackson led the league with a .571 batting average on the season. Miami Trace's Cooper Enix and Jackson's Bodie Wolford each hit 5 home runs. For Miami Trace, Gavin Maynard led the league with a 0.88 ERA, also posted 6 wins for Miami Trace. If you look down a little bit further on the home run charts, it would be Eli Ray and Ryan Simons for Jackson, each with 3 as well. Maybe the most home runs I've heard from the Ironmen in a long time, but an outstanding season for Jackson. As we said, FAC champions, they're rewarded with the 1 seed.
What's interesting about that bracket, John, is obviously Jackson jumps out at you for everything you just said, and Miami Trace not far behind. But keep in mind, as we've highlighted on past weeks, the difference in that FAC race was the Chillicothe knocking off Miami Trace the one time. They sit there as the 5 seed. The 4 seed Athens, that's a conference champion who has really, really good pitching at the top of the rotation. And you look down through there, we know how good the Sheridan program's been over the years. So those first round matchups, especially when you start getting up into this D3 level, I can promise you every team's going to have a really legitimate arm, assuming they have health. They're going to have a really legitimate arm and probably an okay arm to back them up, which is going to make for some really low-scoring, tough outs there in the first round of that D3.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that with Athens. Isaiah Rocha led them with a .375 average, but it was really their pitching and defense that carried them. At 11-1 in the TVC Ohio, they finished a game ahead of Wellston. Zachary Wakely, he finished with 6-2 record with a 0.94 ERA. Also in their pitching staff, this is where I think the depth of their staff could really help them. Liam Klein, Blake Taylor, Daniel Heitland, all with ERAs below 3. They've all been very effective for them in what would be the equivalent of 3 full starts, on top of coming in at different times as well. They have a really good catcher as well. This is an Athens team that if you sleep on them, they can come up and bite you. 14-10 on the season, but then also Chillicothe. I love the makeup of that Chillicothe team. If they could have found a way to kind of mix in a couple of those spots that did graduate with a couple of spots where they're a little weaker this year, I think this team would be super dangerous.
Yeah, I'll start with Athens on the feedback here. Like for Athens, and maybe the Bulldog Nation can correct me if I'm wrong, that their lineup strikes me as maybe not quite as good as some of the Athens teams of recent years. But, man, I've been really impressed with their ability to pitch and defend. And let's face it, this time of year, now is when we really get down to that. You better throw strikes, you better make routine plays, and you better be good at catcher. Because if the ball's going to the backstop every other pitch, you're in trouble.
Yeah, David Sharp's outstanding.
Yes. So if you're pretty good in those areas, you usually have a pretty good chance to get into the fifth inning of a tournament game and have a chance, right? A good competitive product. So that impresses me about them. Same way with Chillicothe. Look, all of those things you just described are why Chillicothe had trouble in a 5-game week. Because let's face it, we didn't have a lot of rain this week.
Right.
In a 5 or 6 game week, everything you just described is why Chillicothe probably ended up coming up just a little short. I don't even have their overall record in front of me, about 500 probably, just under, maybe 3 games under.
8-12.
Okay, so not far off that.
Yeah.
But my point is this. It goes back to what we said earlier. I'm going to contradict myself here a little bit. When you play Chillicothe, and looking back at my bracket here, it's going to be Athens, okay? I feel like it's a fair statement. You tell me if I'm wrong on anything here. Chillicothe, in my opinion, plays in a better conference than Athens baseball-wise. So when you play Chillicothe on that night in that 4 or 5 matchup, I'm not saying Athens at home isn't the favorite, but I'm telling you, you're not playing an 8-12 Chillicothe team. You're playing a pretty good baseball team that has already proven against the best teams in this bracket that they can go toe-to-toe. So that to me is a really intriguing matchup. That 4-5 might jump out at me as one of the best games in the bracket.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. So if you look at Chillicothe, you got Sean Brown with a 377 batting average, Tate Harris. Those two make an outstanding left side of the defense if Harris is not pitching, but Harris can really hit the ball as well. He hit 9 doubles on the year, along with hitting 357. Rucker Deddy, a freshman, I think we're both really high on. They've got some nice
Got
pieces.
better every time I watched him.
Yeah, Connor Boland continued to improve throughout the season. I don't know if you go James Wrinkle or if you Aiden Scales.
Scales is one that I know that has thrown some big games for him as well.
Yeah, and it's just they've got some pitching depth where they can go. They play good outfield defense, play good infield defense. This is a Chillicothe team that I think could be a pretty dangerous matchup.
Here's what I don't know. I was intrigued by this interview earlier in the year, and I know even about halfway through the year, and he even said you could even hear the frustration in his voice. He felt like he had some young men really working hard. I have not watched them now in about 2 weeks. I wonder how their catcher position's coming along, because again, in these close games, catcher defense can be exposed. That could be a big factor.
Yeah, definitely could be a big factor in that first round game, especially with an athletic Athens team that can run a little bit as well. So if we look, let's go to Miami Trace real quick. So one of the things that hurt Miami Trace throughout the last 2 years has been pitching health. So you had Cam Morton, who's one of the top arms in the 2026 class in the state of Ohio, and he just hasn't been healthy. Hopefully he's able to get some good rehab, and I don't remember where he's going to go play in college, but they're going to get a kid that can really pitch, but he's not going to be able to throw for him. But it feels like Gavin Maynard has been really good. Like I said, 6-2. I was actually wrong. It was 6-1 on the year. Then Barron Phipps has been really good as well. He hasn't thrown a lot. He's been more of a just pretty much a bullpen arm for them, but he's 5-2 with a 1.71 ERA and 28 and 2/3 innings. Their defense is so talented that if you just don't walk people, you're going to have a chance, because what Cooper Enix can do offensively, what they can do defensively as well, because we've talked about them in multiple different sports. Gage Bowers has been outstanding. Birdie McBee, another kid that can really play. Keenan Moore hits the ball well. Austin Brown can really hit. That's 5 guys. Carter Davidson, not even mentioned it as well. That's 6 guys in the top 15 in the FAC in hitting. and they're really good defensively. But we've seen some kind of strange scores along the season as well. But I still think this is a team that has a really high ceiling.
The other thing I would pay, as you were rattling off those names, this is something that ended up coming to my mind. In these tournament games, also pay attention to the elite top of the order guy. So like when you're talking about a kid like a Gage Bauer, that's an X factor because – let's say those guys are going to guarantee to get 3, probably in most cases, unless it's just a big time pitching performance, probably 4, right? Mm-hmm. So they get 3 to 4 opportunities to impact a game, especially these games that we think could be decided 2-1, 3-2, 4-3. It just takes once or twice of them, coming up with a leadoff hit or stealing a base or impacting an inning with their speed. We talked about that all year long, and in these tournament games, you need your best players to play their best, and that's something that I'll really be keeping an eye on too as tournament play gets started. Really for baseball and softball, is these top of the order spark plugs to see who can get their pitcher out in front. I was just talking about this with Coach Metler the other day at Paint Valley, about how as his guys started to play better second half of the year, and I was talking about how when pitchers pitch with a lead, it takes a little pressure off of them, right? Let's face it. If you're taking the mound and it's scoreless game in the 4th inning, you feel like, man, I can't mess up at all. You take the mound in the 4th or 5th inning with a 3-0 lead. Now all of a sudden that strike zone looks a little bit bigger and you can relax a little bit more. So pay close attention to those top of the order guys. As you're rattling those off, the Bowers kid really comes to mind.
Yeah, he's outstanding. And then if you look over at Jackson, they've got a freshman at the top of their order right now, and Waylon DeLong. He gets on nearly a 40% clip. If he can get on,
he's a problem.
That makes that entire offense just deeper and deeper because you've got Ryan Simons who gets 653 on base percentage as well. So I mean, you're getting guys on for him. 16 stolen bases as well. Then you got Eli Ray with 11 stolen bases. You've got guys that are getting on base, and then you've got some big bats behind them. They've got some young arms that have been really good throughout this season and are getting better and better, and that's what makes Jackson a really, really high-end team to look at throughout this tournament.
Well, especially with the way they pitch, because I go back to, I'm not saying you won't occasionally see a score get up to like 8-7, but like most of these early tournament games, while the number ones are on the mound, and everyone's playing with the ultimate season on the line urgency, most of these games are going to be played lower scoring and are going to be decided by defensive mistakes or outstanding speed guys at the top of the lineup.
Yeah, and it seems like they're going with a little more of Rylan Wyatt later in the season. It feels like he stepped up and pitched some big games for them in the league, and then you look and. Surprise, surprise, when you talk about a player, even if he's only a freshman at the top of their lineup, if Coach McGraw trusts him, I would trust him as well.
Yes.
That's why like a Waylon DeLong, 35 strikeouts in 22 innings, only a freshman with a 2.82 ERA. This is a team, like I said, huge ceiling. I'm really excited about what this Jackson team can do.
No question. And the other thing I'll throw out there we haven't really talked much about is if you have like 3 really good pitchers and you don't really know who your number 1 is, that's a lot of pressure on the coach to pick the right one. I've had spots in my career where I picked the right one, and I've had spots in my career where I don't know if I did. You know what I mean? And that's a tough call sometimes.
Yeah, that can make ultimately a different.
It's not a series. No do-over, right? It's one and done, and you better be right.
And now let's move to Division 4. Where we're going to continue on, not a series, but Fairfield Union gets the 1 seed, Unioto the 2, Wheelersburg the 3. In Division 4, and we kind of talked about it a little bit before the show even started, how deep Division 4 is, because if you look right now, a team that got to the regional final last year and on paper returned a lot in Circleville is the 9 seed at this point. And then... so they got to go on the road. Logan Elm is the 7 seed. They beat Unioto to start the year. And then a Vinton County team that I think we've both been really impressed with is the 10, Washington, who might have the best pure hitter in the entire Division 4, is the 11. So, I mean, it is a loaded district. It will have 2 district winners in Division 4. So let's start with the 1 seed first. Fairfield Union, the MSL Buckeye champions. Congratulations to them. We watched them. They're out at the stadium the other day. They're out there on Wednesday. They came at 5 p.m. They were there to finish a game. So the game that they were finishing was 7-0 going into the bottom of the third. They were the away team. The game ahead of them was Vinton County Waverly. Went 12 innings. 12 innings, kind of a chilly night too. So they didn't start until almost 9:30. Now, granted, they're playing for the league lives. But during their pregame, you would have thought that they got off the bus, had just warmed up, and were ready to play. Like, they had so much energy from the time it was time to go. And at that point, I watched them, I'm like, that's why they're going to win that league. That's why they're going to be the 1 seed. Because that energy they brought, it was a positive energy. You could tell they're having fun. You could tell they're playing for each other. And ultimately, that can make a gigantic difference. You've got an outstanding catcher, Brady Andrews. I believe they said it was a 3-year starter at catcher. He's been outstanding. Ashton Waldrop with a .493 batting average on the season, and they've got some really good pitching as well. Cameron Silcott pitched that night. He finished with a 5-1 record with a 0.91 ERA, averaging over a strikeout an inning. That league is not an easy league to win. They win it by a game over Bloom Carroll, and then pretty comfortably over the rest of the league after that. Just really impressed with what this Fairfield Union team's done.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Look, in this bracket, in this half of the bracket, there's some teams I like. You know, you've heard me talk about how high I am on the youth of Greenfield McClain. I like the Gallia Academy. I think it's been a neat story. They've really jumped out. I think that Westfall Circleville matchup's really an intriguing one because Circleville's tradition and Westfall with the #1 talent that they're going to put on the mound. But Fairfield Union is just a notch ahead of all of them. I think they're a heavy favorite in this bracket. I'm looking at the bracket. The #1 thing that jumped out to my coach's eyes, that 2-day layoff between the semifinal and the championship. You know, again, they've got so much depth of pitching. There's a lot of options there. So just going to be really, really hard to take them down. I think those other 3 matchups are going to be fun to watch, but I think as they advance out, I think Fairfield Union, in my opinion, just from a pitching standpoint alone, is a notch ahead.
Yeah, I feel like they're a pretty heavy favorite in their side of the district, and maybe their side in general just to get to the Elite 8 because of that pitching depth, because of the catcher. Mm-hmm. We saw Unioto got to the Final Four last year with an Elite #1. Didn't have to use their 2 until the regional final either.
Good 2.
Really good 2.
Yeah.
But an elite catcher, too.
Okay.
You get the elite catcher, and then you're going to have a chance at any level, and that's what Fairfield Union is able to do. So let's just move down that bracket a little bit. Let's stay on that side.
Okay.
The 8-9 game, which I believe may be getting played tonight in the exact same spot. It might be moved to, it might have been Tuesday, but it's Westfall will host Circleville. We're both really high on Cash Conrad.
Yes, very good.
Yeah. And then you look on the other side, you got Glavin Bigham, who's an outstanding player overall. Zach Bell for Circleville struck out 12 in a loss against Zane Trace the other day where they just did not look very good, but still struck out 12 against a team that really can hit the ball. To me, this is a really fun matchup because you're going to have Conrad, more than likely. Caleb Lowe's been really good for them. Rick Hanley, they're really senior heavy. I know they had an injury to the catcher one of the last league games.
Yes.
Hopefully,
I was listening to that on the radio when that happened.
Yeah, so hopefully he's able to come back because he's been really good for him this year. If not, they're going to have to move a freshman into that spot who's been good. But you still,
still rookie.
Ideally, you want everyone to have their best.
Yeah.
In what positions they're in, best in as well. Westfall will host Circleville in an old-fashioned Pickaway County rivalry game. I just think this,
hopefully he's okay there. The 19th, I mean, we're recording here on the 11th. We're still a whole another week out, so hopefully everything will be okay.
And I believe that was last Monday.
Yeah, that was the Zane Trace game, correct?
So
last Monday.
Would be 2 weeks. So hopefully, we're hoping so, but we will see. But this is a really fun matchup there. Kind of your thoughts on this, and especially if they would move on, because with the amount of days in between, they're going to be able to use their 1.
Yeah, you'll still get your best shot there in the semifinal because you're gonna be able to at least throw your number one back at them. And again, I think you're going to see some really athletic lineups. A lot of these teams have some youth, but now that they're 25 to hopefully all 27 games in under the belt, those freshmen become sophomores become juniors in terms of experience, and I think that'll really show up here as well. I'll stay pretty consistent here, John, on my thoughts on the bracket. I think that the Westfall, Circleville, the Gallia Megs, and the McClain New Lex, I think all of those games can be unbelievably entertaining, but I just see Fairfield Union probably a notch ahead because, again, the room for error against them is so small because even on their worst night, I mean, how many runs are they really going to give up in a tournament set? Even on the nights where they have some miscues, you would think it'd be hard to score 3 or 4, wouldn't it? Am I giving them too much credit
No,
there?
I agree with that completely.
Okay.
The one thing that I like is if McClain gets there. McClain up the middle is outstanding
Yes, they are.
defensively.
Yep.
With Chandler at short, Chandler behind the plate.
Yep.
Just really good up the middle. I think it's Lamb in center. And just overall, they just play a really good defense up the middle. They have solid pitching. You obviously have to get there. But with Easton area 1.68 ERA on the year in 45 innings, he's pitched a lot of their big games. Connor Chandler, I would think they would probably want to use him earlier in that with a 2.16 ERA, so he's been really good as well. Those are their top 2 arms. But if they can get there, they play that really good defense up the middle, at least you have a chance against a team that's going to hit the ball and then they're going to run as well.
No, I think that's a fair point because how do you beat great pitching? Well, you pitch great, right? You have to pitch great. You have to defend because, as I said before, you're not beating them 6-5. You're beating them 1-0. You know what I mean? So the first thing you have to be able to do is get them out. And I agree with everything you just said. And it's going to take a team that's got a little bit of range and athleticism because, again, Fairfield Union, it's going to be tough to go in and strike them out 10, 11, 12 times, right? So you're going to maybe strike him out 7 times, and you're going to need to make some plays behind your pitcher, and that athleticism on the defensive side. I think what you're saying about McClain is a true statement.
Yeah, then that Gallia Academy team that's got some really good athletes. Logan Drummond can really fill up the strike zone, and Beckett Camden, one of the more athletic players in our area. So if they would make it there, would not be a surprise in any way. So let's move over to the other side. Unioto will be the 2 seed in the Southeast 1. They will have a bye until the VA on the 23rd when they will take on the winner of Logan Elm Vinton County. Logan Elm beat them 3-1 in the season opener. They faced Blake Sanders that day as well. They beat them 3-1. But, man, this Vinton County team, they don't score a lot of runs. But, man, they don't give up much at all.
No, they pitch well, and again, their top arm has made them a legit contender in the TVC Ohio side. I think what probably separated them is they got caught in a couple 2-3 game type of weeks in the TVC, and maybe they didn't match up with Athens quite as well. We just talked about Athens' pitching depth earlier when we were talking about the Bulldogs, but no, in this setting, Vinton County becomes an extremely difficult out. You're right about Logan Elm. Like Logan Elm, where Circleville on that other side of the bracket, being in that 8-9 game, here's Logan Elm in a 7-10. They just kind of lurk as a real dangerous team. You talked about it, beating Unioto head-to-head and what was kind of like a tournament matchup. Now, obviously, teams are a lot different, a month and a half later. But no, that's an intriguing matchup. And then you go down there to the bottom and you start getting like Wheelersburg with a potential rematch of Waverly where they play in the same conference. But again, Courthouse, 11 seed or not, man, they've played tough competition because I think you and I both agree we're really high on the FAC baseball conference this year.
Yeah, these are 6 teams that if you just, depending on the matchup, I'd probably pick them to win against anybody. And then it's like, oh, well, only one of them is going to get out because they're playing really tough competition throughout.
Right.
So you have the FAC, which to me doesn't, whatever on Washington's record. Sam Lotz has been outstanding for them throughout his high school career. Mm-hmm. I really like the Malachi Wynn, the freshman, how he throws. I think they've got a couple of arms in there that can make things interesting against a Waverly team that's got 2 big-time arms, but defensively is just not very good right now. But you got Cage Alexander, who's an outstanding catcher, can really hit. Caleb Cox is outstanding at short. And then, Toller and Spriggs, those arms, man, it makes them really intriguing if they can get a little bit of offense and then a little bit more locked in out of those young kids. That can kind of maybe make them a big time threat to make a decent run. But with how, we've seen them a good bit out at the VA, when they're not locked in, it can be tough. But when you've got a coach with 500 wins, Coach Noble, congratulations to him. Just the youth does play a big impact because they have no juniors. They they start 2 seniors, and that's all they've got. Everything else is they're extremely young. So you're going to see some really young things that happen at times with them.
Yeah, you mentioned the catcher position with Alexander. I think that's interesting in this matchup. There's some athleticism in that courthouse lineup, and they've struggled throughout the year for whatever reason to maybe consistently get their run game going. And I just wonder if that couldn't be a factor here a little bit because a lot of times that could be against some of the batteries that you go up against in the FAC are pretty legit. But like if when you think of you and I know how athletic like an Osborne is or a Heath, some of those guys there on the courthouse side, if you can get a little bit of your speed game going, a lot of times that can jumpstart your offense and maybe take a little pressure off of your pitching staff.
Yeah, they're also a very young team.
Yeah.
They've got some really talented upperclassmen, but they're playing a whole lot of younger kids as well. If you look over at Unioto, offense fell off a little bit this year, but if you looked at how they made it to the state last year, the offense wasn't the biggest part of their team. It was pitching and defense. They don't have the catcher that they had last year, but Landon Davis has done a nice job for them this year.
Terrific job.
Then you have Zickafoos up the middle. I believe it kind of depends on the night if it's going to be Braden White, but you also have Jack Welch in center, so you really get up the middle, and then Blake Sanders is going to give you a chance any night. I think part of what's going to kind of come down is the health of like a Blake Smith. He got hurt in that Zane Trace game. 394 average, had their best average on the season. David Long does a nice job at third. They've got some nice pieces. I really like Carter Elliott, the freshman. Do they have the depth, and can they play mistake-free defense when Sanders pitches? They've done it at times, but if they do, that makes them a really dangerous team.
I think the way you describe that is perfect, especially if it be a Logan Elm matchup there. We watched it earlier in the year. You expect the same type of game here. When you watch Sanders go toe-to-toe with that Zane Trace lineup, he was terrific, right? And they played really good defense behind, and I think that's the key. So when you ask me, can Unioto do that? I would say yes. I mean, all year long, they come up just shy in the league race, and I don't know that a lot of people, if you go back to the preseason, I don't know if a lot of people had Unioto a run away and a walk-off situation away from really making that SVC race a lot more interesting. So they still get to, 11-3 in the league? So, I mean, it's a situation with Sanders on the mound. They're going to defend. Will they hit enough? I don't know, but I think they'll pitch and defend where I'd be shocked if they don't get into the 5th, 6th inning, as I said back in the opening of tonight's show, with a chance to win and advance to a district championship.
Yeah, and they saw how small ball helped get them to the Final Four last year, and they're going to buy in on that as well. But if you just look over at Logan Elm, Bennington's outstanding, Brady Neff's outstanding, Seymour, they've got some really nice pieces. And then also over at Vinton County with Wyatt Channel, if he's going, David Northam's going, that's a very dangerous team. So that's, man, this
that will not be an easy game for Logan Elm at all because of the arm that Vinton County is going to put out there.
Yeah, it doesn't matter which one it is.
Yeah.
One of them probably makes them a better team catching wise, but the other one, but he also might give them the best chance at getting strikeouts on the night.
Let me say this about Logan Elms plays into this too with their athleticism at the top. But that Unioto team, Zickafoos Welch there at the top. Remember what I said earlier about sometimes you need your spark plugs to spark you in these big moments against elite pitching. Can you get out in that first inning and give your team a good at bat and find a way on base and give the middle of your order a chance to play out in front.
Yep, and that's what they did last year in the tournament. Let's see if they can do that in a one-and-done season as well. So let's jump to Division 5. So in Division 5, I think you can see in my notes, because we share notes on this. So in Division 5, I have in all caps, loaded. Only 2 district champions out of that group, which features Minford as the 1, Lucasville Valley as the 2, Lynchburg-Clay as the 3, Zane Trace the 4, Ironton the 5, Portsmouth the 6. And that's, even skipping out on hitting in a couple of spots. So, Wellston's the 8, Fairland's the 9. Even if you look down at like a West Union who's got 2 wins, you got Thomas Barnhart who struck out 1,000 this year, and actually I got the exact stats here on Thomas Barnhart. Thomas Barnhart for West Union has struck out 96 batters in 43 2/3 innings. Struck out more than 2 batters per inning with a 0.48 ERA. Now, if the ball gets put in play, it could be trouble for them. But if he's on the mound, West Union's going to have a chance against anybody, especially in that first round when they would go to Chesapeake.
No, I agree completely. And that's what makes baseball so unique. You look down there and think 20 seed. Well, in a lot of sports like a volleyball or a basketball, it's probably not likely that you're going to see a very competitive game. But you're right, because of the arm, all of a sudden that team throws out there. It can make things interesting, especially if you don't get off to a good start and you allow a pitcher to get into that 3rd, 4th inning and set a win.
Well, then Northwest is the 7. They'll face off against the Pike team. They're playing tonight. This is taped on a Monday, so we could probably check our phones here in like an hour, and we'll know what happened.
Well, it's just interesting. It's interesting too to see. it's interesting to see too what. How teams handle that. That's about the 3rd time you said that during the show tonight, where they're playing regular season late in the year, and you want to win, what I mean? But at the same time, you don't want to give them a great look at an arm or so forth. So that's interesting.
So let's start on, it'll be the Southeast 2. So we'll start with Minford being the 1 seed. Minford, the 1 seed, at this moment is the only SOC 3 champion. Nothing is set in stone, though, because Valley still has a game and an inning left to play to see if they can get a split there. Minford finished 8-2 in the league, so they will at the very least get a share. Mason Bradley, Ty Borland, Max Lauder have been outstanding on the mound for Minford. Then you toss in like a Carter Frazee, Colby Mullins, Curtis Glenn. You've just got outstanding depth of the lineup for Minford, and that's one of the reasons why they are the 1 seed, but also why they're SOC 3 champions once again.
I love Minford's draw. I really do. And that's not to say there's not good teams in there, because there are good teams. But I just, when you consider the way they, as they should as the 1 seed, they separate themselves from some other teams. So this is a prime example of where if they play to their ability, they could really roll through the first couple rounds and then set themselves up in a championship round where whoever gets there is going to be pretty battle tested, and chances are have probably used quite a few arms, or at least their best arms the day before, because I'm looking at that bracket, John. That's a back-to-back 27th and 28th in terms of the district semi-district final. So you love Minford's draw there if they're up to the challenge and play to their capability. Are they able to play clean baseball and not let some of these early games let a team hang around? Can they get out in front and play good clean baseball? If they can, I think their road to the district championship makes them a big time favorite with whoever survives, because you look down there at the bracket, which I know you'll do in a second. You do have some good teams like a Zane Trace, like an Ironton, but think about what they're going to go through. They are playing the day before against each other just to get to that game.
Yeah, and then kind of left out, and Evan Richards, Colt Donahoe, and Mark Napier, guys with a lot of big game experience as well for this Minford team. But as you said, it kind of comes down to what they do pitching wise, and just overall what the opponent does, because we had talked about it of like how you can kind of plan it out. Well, if you don't have any days off, it's hard to plan out. Hey, if you're Zane Trace, we're gonna hold off on Pierce Manson for tonight. We're gonna hold off on him. Well, if you need him to throw more than 30 pitches, well, then you don't have him the next day. You won't have your 1 or 2. I coached my 1 year at Wilmington. We threw our 2 on Tuesday. I think it was Monday or Tuesday. Threw our 2. We had to play the next day, so we're trying to hold off our 1. 2 struggled. We go to our 4. I don't know why we skipped our 3, but we went to our 4. He does fine. We bring in our 1 to get out of a tough situation. He gets us out of the inning. Well, we take the lead, and we're kind of discussing, like, should we take him out? Should we not? We decide to go with him. Last batter of the game fouls off 5 pitches, strikes out, pitch number 31 on the day. So we don't have him the next day, so we had to throw our 3. Now, granted, when you're at a Division I school, you have, our top 4 guys all pitched in college. So, like, our 3 was able to go to Mason and compete. I think we lost 4-1, maybe 5-1. Yeah. Either way, it was very competitive, but, like,
but that last batter and the opponent before almost beat you tomorrow night.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the point you're making, and I think it's a great point because you do. It's one of those things where it's easy for people to look at the bracket. Hey, I'd throw off in that game. Well, you throw off until you get beat. You know what I mean? And then how good's Manson tomorrow night if you're not playing? Exactly. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where. So no, that's tough. That's a good point, and that's why I think. Not to say Minford's not going to have a challenge. I mean, Wellston and Fairfield are two good baseball teams. But again, if they're able to play up to their ability, I think that they have the pitching depth to still put themselves in a really prime spot on back-to-back days.
And kind of want to just go on, like, why you wouldn't skip Pierce Manson, or why you would maybe. Manson, 100 strikeouts, 57 innings, a 1.59 ERA, 8-1 on the season, lost the opener of the year to a team, Delaware Hayes team from Delaware, outside of Columbus area. He's been outstanding. He went 9 innings against Unioto in a 2-0 instant classic a couple weeks ago in a league championship game. Is able to just go. He's your workhorse. But you also have Gunnar McCullough, who went 6-2 with a 2.38 ERA. So if you would go with McCullough over Manson, you're still okay. Like, it's not like you're in a bad situation, but it's still a lot you talk about before. McCullough, who's I would think would be the SVC Player of the Year. I don't know how the voting went or how it will go.
I have no idea. Until they separate pitching, it makes it really tough to know.
And so he goes 6-2 on the mound, 2.38 ERA, hit .413 on the year, stole 15 bases, knocked in 20, scored over 20 on the year. Lucas Euler knocked in 35 runs for Zane Trace so far on the year. So he's going to be over 40, I would guess, by the time the tournament comes around. He's been outstanding for them. And then you got a guy like Noah Kaiser. This could be the difference maker in that if they throw off, if they go McCullough, they've been going Kaiser late in games. He's got 4 saves. He's been really good. The only game where he got knocked down at all was the game he started. If you say, okay, we're going to wait on Manson, we're going to go Kaiser, well, he's got 4 saves. So he's got that situational pitching. So at least that's there. They've prepped for it in a way.
I don't disagree with anything you just said. Let me just throw the other side at you in terms of if the seeds hold, you're talking about Ironton. So you're talking about a really good baseball team. You've got to be really confident that you're putting your best foot forward. Now, I know when you've accomplished what Zane Trace has accomplished, the goal is to win the district. It's not to get to the district final, you know what I mean? But at the same time, if you're facing Ironton on the 27th, you've got to be confident that you're putting your best foot forward because that's a good baseball team.
And here's the thing about Ironton. They don't give up runs.
Yeah.
They don't score a ton, but they don't give up runs. A 1.38 ERA on the season from their top 4 arms, which has been pretty much all that's thrown for them this year. Carson Freeman, Jacob Hughes, Dawson Filial, Braden Barker, just been outstanding for them, giving them a chance night in, night out, because they play good defense, and then you're just not giving up much. 1.38 is unbelievable as a staff.
And the only thing I'll throw in on the Zane Trace thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm going off of memory here, but I'm just like 3 games jumped in my mind here over the last couple weeks where Zane Trace's offense is so good that when they've been able to get into a couple matchups of my 2 versus your 2, my 3 versus your 3, they're going to outslug you.
Yeah.
That's not in tournament. I'm not saying that offense can't do it on any given night, but on tournament night, you're going to be facing the other team's number one arm, so you've got to make sure that you are matching up in the right way.
Like when you look at that Unioto matchup, 2-0, 9 innings, it doesn't come until
If it's played
2 hours.
24 hours earlier, what's the scenario?
Right. Yeah, so it definitely can make a big-time impact. Now, for Ironton, don't sleep on Portsmouth West in that first matchup just because West has been dealing with injuries throughout the year, and they've started to play better later in the year.
A lot of baseball tradition down there.
Yeah, and you don't want to face one of those in general. So the games on the 27th will be played at VA Memorial Stadium, with the finals being played the next day in Athens at OU. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. Like, if you are more than likely where your team is located and there's a stadium near it is probably where they're playing. So I think in the SVC, the only 2 schools that won't be playing their district semi game, if they get there, would be the winner of Paint Valley and Adena, because they got to go play Eastern Reedsville, who's closer to, it makes more sense for them to go to Athens than it does to come to Chillicothe. So we should have some really nice crowds over there at VA Memorial Stadium. So let's move over to the other side, the Southeast one, which Lucasville Valley will be the 2 seed there, which is the top seed. They've had an outstanding season this year. Without, they still have to take care of business. They have West, which, I mean, it's deep into the game right now, them playing West on a Monday night, and then they have to finish with South Webster, a game that they're up 7-5 in the bottom of the 6th, and they're the home team. So they just had to get 3 outs, and they get those 2 games in, they would split for the league. But, man, they have been really good pitching and defense, and it's dealing with some adversity as well, because Carson Powell, who's an outstanding arm, had Tommy John surgery and is out for the year, not pitching. But being the athlete and the player he is, leads them in hitting. He's hitting .435 on the year, but Nolan Barnett has been unbelievable for them both ways. 6-0 on the mound, 1.89 ERA in 48 innings. He puts the ball in play a lot. So their defense has to be really good behind him. Gabe McNeil's an outstanding part of that. But Powell and Barnett are each hitting over .430 with 20-plus runs scored and 20-plus RBIs each for each of them to kind of spark that Valley offense.
Yeah, the depth of the pitching staff really shows up with the injury there. And again, I love their draw. Just like Minford at the top, they have a really, really good draw. And I do think it'll test their pitching as you advance to what they hope would be the final. Now, that's a 26th to the 28th jump, so still not a lot of wiggle room. You never know what Mother Nature might do to that as well. But for the most part, I really like where Lucasville Valley is there on the bracket to advance.
Yeah, and if you look at who they could possibly play, the possible matchup would be a Northwest and a Piketon winner, which is where the league and the leagues and kind of the way people respect the leagues kind of come in. Piketon finished tied for 7th in the SVC. They will face off a team that finished tied for 1st in the SOC2 in a 7-10 matchup. Now, Piketon has to go on the road, but because of what Piketon's schedule is, they get a lot of respect there, and where Northwest ultimately drops to 7, but they've got some really nice pieces. Aiden Armbrister, Levi Shepard is one of the more underrated players. We're going to talk underrated softball players. He's one of the more underrated baseball players in the area, a senior who covers a great deal of ground, plays really good defense, but also sparks their offense. And then they've got 2 really nice sophomore arms, and Chase Kingery and Braxton Burris as well. Going to make that Northwest team an interesting one to see.
Oh, no question about it. And I mean, look, we talked about it before. So whoever comes out of that Northwest Piketon game, they're going to roll their number 1 right back out there on the 26th. So again, Valley's going to be tested, assuming they survive that Dawson Bryan and South Point winner. But no, I like the ability for Lucasville Valley. They're so battle tested, and as you described, they're going to get even more tested down the stretch here, trying to play meaningful games. I know a lot of teams get into this non-league stretch, and they have a lot of different opinions. I've heard coaches say, well, so-and-so may not throw the rest this week. They may not do this. Where you're playing these meaningful games, you're playing survive and advance type of games now, and I think that'll serve Valley well.
Yeah, it will definitely benefit them moving forward. But let's move down the bracket a little bit. The the Shack 1 champions, which I got to get to this so I can read the hilarity of these stats. So they're 12-0, could be 13-0 when this episode drops. They're going to finish 5 games ahead of second place. At worst, 4 games ahead of second place. North Adams finished 8-5 in the conference. Quin Wells, a sophomore, leads the state of Ohio, not the division, the state of the 700 schools that play. We'll say the 8 players at each school that qualify, 3,500 players plus in the state. He has the best batting average of all qualifying players at .649 on the season. He scored 33 times. He swiped 31 bases on the spring as well. Just an absurd sophomore year from him. Teammate Christian Beachy led the Shack with an ERA of 0.30. Very young team still, 15-3 coming in. They were a state Final Four team last year. They've got some big-time pieces, and we really like the catcher, Elon Faust. A really outstanding team in Lynchburg-Clay.
They are. They check all the boxes. And I think this is the prime example of where 2 things can be true. Remember, we said earlier in the year that the Shack was absolutely hammered by graduation. They'd had some of their best teams in my recent memory in terms of all the years I've coached here recently. This particular year, obviously Lynchburg way ahead of the competition in that particular conference, but they're obviously setting their sights on something bigger than the conference. And as they get into the tournament, they'll get tested even more and more. But you're right; they have multiple arms. They can come at you really at all thirds of the lineup. That top third, middle third, bottom third can all rally and get things going. So no, they're a complete team, and that makes them an extremely dangerous team down there at the bottom bracket, coming out of that 3 seed. They'll be big favorites to move out there and face the winner of Portsmouth and Alexander.
Yeah, that was without really even mentioning the fact that Quin Wells also with a 0.71 ERA on the year.
So again, an option of who throws and when do they throw and so forth.
He went 6-0, Beachy 4-0 on the season. Then you have Tanner Roberts with a 1.12 ERA. So, I mean, you're just...
Don't sleep on that Portsmouth pitching staff as well.
Yeah, that Portsmouth pitching staff has been outstanding. They are led by Jacob Roth, who's 4-0 on the season with a 1.38 ERA. But then you have Trevin Brooks, Leland Skurlock, who both have low ERAs and a lot of experience as well. And then you toss in Jacob Roth. We mentioned Quin Wells being number 1 in the state as far as batting average. Roth is a lowly 11th in the state, hitting .568 on the year. He's also scored 33 times, stole a lot of bases. This is a Portsmouth team that I think is really set up to make another long run as well. They made the regional final a few years back, got a lot of experience back from that team, and they've got some really nice pieces.
No, I agree, and I we said throughout the year that we thought the Alexander program was getting better and better, and when they have their best pitching on the mound, they'll be a team that puts up quite a fight there. But I like Portsmouth there coming out of that particular matchup, and then on the 26th, Lynchburg and Portsmouth offer you 2 teams that whoever the coaches decide to go with as the starter will be outstanding. But the nice thing about there is both of those teams, if things go the wrong way, they don't have to live and die with it because they have the ability in that second and third spot of their rotation to still be really competitive.
Yeah, the semifinal there between what would likely be Lynchburg-Portsmouth, if it goes elsewhere, would still be a really outstanding matchup, would be played at VA Memorial Stadium. The final would be at Bob Wren Stadium down at Athens. However, the Valley in either Northwest or Piketon matchup would be at Athens as well. So they would play their back-to-back games. So for Division 5, as I said, loaded, and I stand by that. It's going to be an outstanding tournament when it comes to Division 5. Where I also think it'll be outstanding in Division 6 will be what should be a very wide open tournament. The top half of the bracket, I think, is kind of crazy with how it kind of broke down, which would be Southeast 1. So we'll look at that first. Huntington gets their first ever 1 seed as a baseball program. So congratulations to the Huntsmen on that, an outstanding non-conference season. They'll tell you that they probably left a little bit on the table in the conference. They finished 5th in the SVC, but they still are able to secure the 1 seed because of how well they played in the non-conference, going undefeated in the non-conference. A lot of respect for what they're able to do in league play, but also what they're able to do out of the league.
Well, and it doesn't surprise me that they go undefeated in the non-conference, because as good as they are at the top of their rotation, I felt like this team had some depth in the rotation. Mm-hmm. And then they had a lineup that is really sparked by some good speed at the top. But then as the year went on, more and more guys grew up. You remember I said clear back at the beginning of the year that I thought that this would be a team that Coach Carroll would really thrive with. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't just talking about personality of township and grid and things like that. I was talking about actual baseball, stylistically. This is a team that when they're at their best, I believe they get them on, they get them over, they get them in. You know, so he puts a ton of pressure. Chad Carroll coaches base running really, really well. They're aggressive. They put a lot of pressure on you. So when he gets his speed on, he's not afraid to make outs on the bases. He turns them loose. He lets them go, and they can really draw the attention of the pitcher from the stretch. And you got to do some things. So in the league play, they've been on the wrong side of some 1- and 2-run games. Mm-hmm. They've been on the wrong side of some late inning, but I think they've grown from that. I think it'll make them battle tested, and you know, it'll never be easy because of the level of pitching you're going to see, but overall, you know, Huntington's got to feel good to be the 1 seed and not have to play in that first round.
Yeah, the having that break in that first round is going to be huge, because if you look at anywhere, maybe it's the pitching side for Huntington. Might be the only thing where, you know, Andrew Oyer has a ton of big game experience, but not a huge strikeout guy. He's got some really good stuff, but not a huge strikeout guy. So
got to defend,
and they do that very well. They only have 2 seniors. It's Oyer and Sean Davis. They've got some really nice pieces. So the fact they're very young, they're very aggressive. They'll put the ball on the ground. They'll make you field bunts. They'll make you make plays. They'll keep bunting at you and make you keep making plays. And then their 9-hole can still wrap one to the gap and run for days. So it doesn't matter. They will bunt 1 through 9, and then 1 through 9 can also get an extra base hit. It doesn't matter. They know what their job is. It's either get the guy over, sometimes it's get him in, but they believe in themselves 1 through 9, 1 through 13, really, based off of their entire lineup. Defensively, they're outstanding. Love what Frankie Hirsch does at short, but man, Troy McDonald Jr., put him wherever. He's going to be dynamic. Landon Lowry's got a great arm behind the dish. I like the Hopkins kid at third. They got some really nice pieces.
No, they do, and I think that'll present quite a matchup to the winner of Symmes Valley North Adams there in that 8-9 matchup, and then going and facing that Huntington group will be an interesting game, because again, Symmes Valley's got a nice arm there. If they come out of that, then that's a factor.
Yeah, Tanner Korn is outstanding. Yeah. He's hitting well over 500 on the season as well. Over 100 career hits, around 300 career strikeouts. So he's been outstanding. They're a league champion as well. They shared in the SOC too with Northwest. And then, North Adams has gotten better throughout the year. They finished 8-5 in their conference. Also for Symmes Valley, you have Andy Stroh at the top of the order as well. Thompson is another one. Maybe they don't have a ton of depth in their lineup, but they've got some really nice pieces overall. And then I was just looking at the stats earlier for the Shack, one of the things that really stood out to me, if the website will work. Maverick Winkler from North Adams, only a freshman. 419 average as a freshman, 31 runs scored. He just does so many little things. Gets on base at a 50% clip. He's been really good in that aspect throughout the year. He steals bases when he gets on base. He can really make a lot of good things happen for this team. Only a freshman, and that's one of the ways that North Adams has gotten better and better throughout the year.
Well, and it's one of the ways, again, to stay with the theme of the show that I've talked about, spark plugs, offensively. If you're going to get to a pitcher like Quin, you're going to have to manufacture some offense. And so getting a base runner on like that could be a big factor in the game.
And then you move down to the 4 seed Southeastern.
How about this pitching matchup coming out?
Yeah,
maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. I've just been anxious to talk about it.
Yeah, those games would also be at VA Memorial Stadium. So looking forward to that, and probably check those out on our streams. But we'll know that coming up next week on the show. We'll know a little bit more. Actually, no, we won't, because the tournament doesn't even start till next week. So whatever, I'm close. We'll figure it out.
I was going to say not to look ahead, because in baseball, again, nothing's guaranteed, but the Southeastern and Manchester advance on out there to the 23rd. Yeah. That McWhorter Applegate matchup, that could be first to one wins.
Yeah. Carson McWhorter, one of the top pitchers. He helped get Southeastern to their first ever Elite Eight last year as a junior. Great breaking ball. He's a pitcher. Like, he's not a thrower. Yeah. Not going to really overpower you, but he still throws pretty hard. But the way he pitches, they do a really good job of defending. If he can get the ball rolled over to short, Gage Cheadle's going to make plays on that. The Kessler kid's thrown well for them this year as well, only a freshman. They've got some nice pieces. The thing about them, and I think this is probably why they got to the 4, they just haven't played. They played 4 non-league games in the nicest spring that we've had in 30 years. So the fact they just haven't played games is probably going to be what brought them down to the 4, because everybody else had more depth.
And again, I think it's fair discussion. They're going to say we beat Huntington twice and so forth, and they did. But you're right about the whole body of work in terms of you when you don't play, a lot of people are going to see that win total and. Look, I'm not here to say one way or the other, but I'm just saying that's a factor in terms of how the voting goes.
So everyone knows how talented and deep the SVC is, which is why the team that finished 5th got the 1 seed here. But they finished 9-5. Southeastern did in the conference. They only went 2-2 in the non-conference, so they just didn't play games, and that can help. That can hurt you. Where in RPI, maybe it doesn't affect you really, but when you still have the not in person, but you have the human element more of it, then that can impact a voting where maybe they should have been a little bit higher. But ultimately, this is still a team with a nice catcher, outstanding arm, outstanding shortstop. I think the Cosby kids really came along throughout the season. Braden Burns is really good as well. They've got some really nice pieces. This is a scary 4 seed.
It really is, and I would throw Manchester into the same thing there. And then I guess what's interesting, if Huntington's able to survive, boy, do they put themselves in a great opportunity if the winner of the McWhorter Applegate game throws more than 75 pitches. Mm-hmm. Now Huntington becomes a really, really big favorite in the final, just based on what I've seen throughout the year.
Yeah, and I would guess that they would, with how good those teams are. Now, Manchester is the Shack 2 champion on the season. They go 9-4. They beat Peebles twice, so we talked about this now I don't know if they do the same thing in the spring, but they beat Peebles twice. They both finished 9-4. I would guess the head-to-head.
Yeah, you mentioned that in the fall, correct?
Yeah.
When you had the tie. Yep.
Yeah, and then so Manchester likely gets the nod as league champions by themselves, but if not, they tie for it. Luke Applegate hit 420. He led the Shack 2. He also struck out 82 in only 38 innings of work on the mound, a 1.66 ERA on the season. They're a team, they haven't played a ton of games either, only 10-8 overall, so they've gone 1-4 in the non-conference. Yeah. But, both of them you kind of get a little bit because you're very reliant on that one big arm.
Well, but what happens too is, and you see this in the voting, is you get these other conferences that have moved into modern day, and they use enrollment, and they have divisions, and they have different things. So like we've talked about it with Northwest and Symmes Valley, now Manchester, where they're conference champions, where you see teams like Huntington and Southeastern, they're fighting like heck just to see if they can finish in the top half because of the Zane Traces and the Uniotos and the Westfalls. And, it's just a different conference landscape. There's no way around that. I don't care where you're from. If you don't see that, then you and I will just have to agree to disagree.
Right.
But now that you're into the postseason, all of that's to the side because, as we've been saying all night, it comes down to this one arm. And this one arm's really good. If you haven't had a chance to see the Applegate kid pitch in person, high velocity kid. A lot of times in high school baseball, especially when you're down here in the D6, some of these lineups, he can really overpower the bottom half of the lineup. He puts a ton of pressure on the top third of your lineup to produce, because if he's in the strike zone, a lot of your guys, as you go down toward the bottom of the lineup, are going to struggle to get the ball and play against him. You just read off the strikeout total, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a big factor. McWhorter, obviously for Southeastern, he too throws with nice velocity, but I agree with you. I think it's his complete arsenal of pitching, and it's just his ability to go get a little extra when extra is required. He has a good feel for the moment sometimes in terms of pitching in and out of trouble. But both of these guys now, they know their league standing, they know their seed. Coaches are going to line them up and have them as strong as they've been all year, and assuming the temperatures are about ready to go back up to more seasonal temperatures, good warm days to pitch coming up. They're going to throw the ball with their best velocity. If they have command, the winner of that matchup is going to be well earned. But again, do they have enough depth to compete 2 days later in the championship game?
Now, one thing to maybe keep an eye on would be Eastern Brown. Eastern Brown started off the season 0-9. They are now 6-11, so they won 6 of their last 8 games. Now, the schedule has gotten much easier to get through that, but that's a team playing with some confidence going into the tournament, and maybe they're a team, they've most likely seen Applegate before. They didn't see him earlier this year, but you never know when you're facing a little bigger school.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean,
point.
It's just they're a team that they've gotten much more competitive the second half. Even in their 2 losses, were much more improved after that kind of nightmare start for them. But keep an eye out on that. That could be the only thing that could rob us.
That's a great point.
Yeah, because that could rob us of an outstanding game, and I don't think we'd be mad at the Warriors if they did. So then let's move over to the Southeast 2, which is where Eastern Reedsville will be the 2 seed. So they'll be at the top. They won the TVC Hawking once again. I did not go back to see how many straight years it is, but it feels like it's
a lot.
It's a lot, or they've been right at the top for most of it. They finished 9-1. Waterford, who's the 3 seed in this, finished 7-3. The speed of the Eagles is second to none. Ethan Edwards stole 29 bases. He had 100 hits, 100 runs scored, 100 stolen bases, struck out 100 batters in his high school career. Just outstanding. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. Unbelievable career for him so far. 29 stolen bases for him. Parker Durst with 22, Hunter Needs with 15. So those 3 get on base, they're going. And then you have a pitching staff with Edwards, Clayton Moore, Braxton Yonker providing really depth of pitching that's going to give them a chance with outstanding coaching to win yet another district championship.
Well, yeah, there's certainly the factor there. The one thing is they're right off the bat going to face a really good arm out of the SVC with the all SVC matchup to get to them there with Paint Valley and Adena. Is my understanding that the Garrison kid
seems like he's healthy.
Bounced back here about a week ago through almost 50 pitches and seemed to go pretty well. So if he's strong, they're not your normal 10 seed. Let's be honest. I mean, like they they played at a certain level earlier in the year, and then when he kind of went to the shelf, at least from a pitching standpoint, things went south in a hurry. And all those things add up to being the 10 seed, because again, you are what your record says you are, right? They're giving up 20 plus in a couple of games there. All that stuff, if I'm being honest now, doesn't mean anything.
Right.
It kind of comes back, and he takes the ball. This Reinhardt versus Garrison matchup was played out earlier in the year, and remember, Adena beat him on a walk-off 3-2, I believe it was. So runs be hard to come by. Both of those lineups have a little bit more depth to them now than they did a month ago. So I think that'll be a big factor. But no, whoever advances out of that SVC battle-tested league will be a legitimate opponent for Eastern there on the 23rd.
Now, that's an Adena team. If you looked at the RPI last week, at the time of the seeding, they were the 7, and then they dropped to the 10 spot there. So, they still beat some good teams early in the year. Then they've had an extended losing streak, which has not gone well. But as you said, with Garrison healthy, they're a completely different team. With the win over Zane Trace, I think kind of says all you need to know about how talented they are. Also beat Gaia early in the year, so they beat some good teams. And then that is, we saw Reinhardt throw a no-hitter against a nice Waverly team early in the year. They've got a really good catcher. That should be a really fun matchup for a third time. And I think Bay Valley's got to be happy that they get the home game.
Well, and both of these teams more than battle tested. I mean, let's face it, they faced the likes of Sanders throughout the year, McWhorter throughout the year. You see even in the non-league, Bay Valley saw Applegate. I mean, they faced legitimate pitching. So these offenses are more than ready to do battle against one another.
And their pitchers have faced legitimate offenses too, so they've had to figure out ways to get those teams out.
Yes.
And that's one of the things where you're going to just be better and better. And it's both have strong catching games, both like to run, both will put the ball on the ground, both will bunt. It's just going to be whoever executes better on that day. And then the benefit for the winner of that is they don't have to go all the way to Reedsville. They just have to go to OU, which is still a pretty healthy jaunt for whoever wins it, but you take that over the extra 45 minutes as well.
That you would, and the other thing we haven't talked about the whole night, don't underestimate what we think are going to be close games. Don't underestimate being the home team. I mean, in volleyball or basketball or whatever, you're on your home court or what. In baseball, softball, it's like the strategy of being that walk-off opportunity if you get caught in a close game. Let's face it, if you get into the 7th inning, being the home team is a big, big deal. What do we always say? If you don't win it as a visiting team, you got to make 6 outs, right? You got to so being the home team is a big, big deal. Yeah,
it is a big advantage as well. So let's move down. Waterford will take on Ripley in what I thought was going to be the worst drive of the tournament. It's not. It's not, because you got it. The worst, I believe, is in Division 7. But Ripley having a rough season will have to go to Waterford. Waterford most likely move on. Peebles will take on an improved Eastern Pike team. But man, this Peebles team really young, but man, they're fun.
I like them. I like Peebles. I'd even go as far to say I think Peebles is very capable in that entire bottom bracket. Like they have good young arms and they have multiple arms, and they've played a good enough schedule. They've played a mixture of opponents is what I like. And look, some nights their youth has showed up. Some nights you watch them and you're like, my goodness, are they going to be this, or this? And then you watch them another night and the youth will show up. But through all of that, you grow and you learn and you grow and you learn. And now here you are. You're a 6 seed. You're going to play a home game. And, I think they have enough arms to really give themselves a chance to make a little mini run here.
Yeah, they finished 9-4, tied with Manchester at the top of the Shack 2. They're foursome of young arms, all sophomores or freshmen. Bo Johnson, Braylon Stevens, Lucas Schumas, and then Caleb Johnson all pitched below a 2.80
Well,
ERA.
we watched both Johnsons in the win over Chillicothe.
And then Crew Wilson, the catcher, only a freshman, hit 348 on the season to lead the offense.
Baseball player.
Yeah. I mean, it's just you have 2 seniors, and both of them can really play. Their outfield defense, I thought, was elite in that game against Chillicothe. It's a team that it's a really bright future for them in Peoples.
No, I
in
agree.
baseball, which you if you've heard it before, it's been a long time since you've heard it.
I agree with that. I made the comment. I was on record saying that a couple weeks back that all the years I've coached, this is by far one of the more athletic Peoples teams I've seen on the baseball diamond.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how they continue on. I think Eastern Reedsville is going to be the favorite there, but at the same time, it is a lot of depth in this Southeast 2 district. The winner, I believe this is the one, the winner would have to go on to face the winner of Highland and Toronto, which whatever. I mean, you get there, you give yourself a chance.
Now, if I'm SVC biased, then tell me, Shayne, you're SVC biased. But am I wrong to think that Reedsville Eastern, although they will have their number one on the mound, am I wrong to think that their first game could be their toughest game in terms of their route to the Sweet 16?
No, I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's especially if you get a Garrison or Reinhardt when he's like as confident. If he's at his full confidence and his pitches are working, it's going to be tough to find a better one on that bottom half. So let's move over to Division 7 now, our last one on the baseball side. The overall 1 seed would be the Green Bobcats, and they really earned that by beating South Webster early in the year and then obviously having an outstanding season as they win the SOC 1, as they will get the 1 in the Southeast 1. So for Green, John Knapp has been outstanding for years, but also this year he goes 7-1 with a 0.71 ERA, 86 strikeouts in 49 innings, led an outstanding staff. Gabe Blevins, Case McIntyre, Brendan Rennison, all guys that could really throw the ball for them. They end up winning the SOC 1 by a game clear of Clay, who went 6-2. That's why they are the 1 seed here in the Southeast. And really, I think with their pitching lining up, with Knapp or any of those other ones, you can it's going to be hard for them to go wrong.
Big time favorites in this bracket. Obviously the elite arm, but as you said, a depth of arms and able to be able to go to with the short turnaround from the semifinal to the final. Very similar to the bracket we just talked about. Potential for a big time pitching matchup there, Trimble versus Notre Dame in the bottom bracket. But then who comes out of that if it's over 75 pitches? Now where do they turn?
Right.
You know what I mean? Do they? That's not to say they don't have a second arm, because both those teams kind of do.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it's at the level of the Green.
Well, if you get Luke Cassidy able to go against Green, then you like at least their chance to be very competitive in the game. But if you're probably gonna have to use Cassidy, because if he goes over 50 pitches, he can't come back 2 days later. So with that Trimble team, they don't score a ton.
They don't.
But man, they pitch, and their defense is. From what I've seen from them this year, I would put their defense at the top 5% of what I've seen out VA Memorial Stadium as far as the high school teams have gone. Yeah. And I mean, we just finished I think we finished like 70 games there in the spring. So one of the top defenses that we saw this spring.
Well, and I think what happens there too is I studied them deep last year because we played them. But like, I think a lot of their command on the mound, their ability to hit their spots, they pitch well to, and it allows their defense to know kind of where the ball's going, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, their pitcher is pinpoint in terms of where he wants to throw it, pitches to a lot of contact. But as you say, that can also give teams a chance to one swing of the bat to kind of maybe get some guys on and hit a gap in some of these bigger ballparks that these tournament games are played in.
Yeah, and these games would be played at Logan, which has a really nice turf facility. But really, Fairfield seems like they've been playing better late in the year. I mean, they knocked off Manchester, which gave Peebles the chance to at least get even with them in the Shack 2 late in the year. They've got a really nice arm with Ben and Cam Miller. They've got nice pieces there. They're a team that's
not a short trip.
No, that's not a short trip at all. And for Fairfield, imagine what they'd be if they had the kids that started middle school there. This is be a completely different team because you've seen 3 outstanding players that are at local schools that are big time impact players that they don't have. And this is a team that made it to the Elite Eight a couple of years ago. They're a well coached team. I think if Green saw them, they wouldn't be real pumped. But I do think the Green offense overall and their experience will make a difference. And I think that's why they're the heavy favorite in this district.
I agree completely.
So let's move down to the Southeast 2, which the 1 seed here will be the Jeeps of South Webster. Just year in, year out, they face top-level competition. They compete really well with that competition. They won the league last year. They've got some really nice arms. Bryson McCullough just got his 100th career hit the other day. You've got McGraw, Andrews Large, all guys that can really throw. Face some really outstanding opponents so far this year. One of the reasons why they get the 2 seed is because of that schedule and because what they do against the schedule. It's not like they're getting blown out. They're highly competitive night in, night out.
Yeah, this team's legit. Now, I will say this. They get in a sneaky bracket here where there's going to be some big-time pitching that they're going to face. But no, listen, this team, they're really good. They've been there, done that. They're going to pitch and defend themselves. But it does catch your attention when you start to see some of the arms that they might face along the way.
One of those arms, White Oaks, Isaiah Clift, struck out 74 in 47 innings, a 1.04 ERA for the Wildcats. Now, they've not had the typical schedule or season for them. They finished 3rd in the Shack 2. But with the coaching that they have, the experience that they have, even if they are still very young, because they don't have a senior on the roster, they've got some pop in the bats as well. They're a team that if they're able to get by Miller, which, by the way, Miller to White Oak is the longest trip. It's like 2 hours and 34 minutes, I believe. That's a whale of a trip for
I'll take your word for
5 o'clock game, but at least you get to play on turf. But that's a White Oak team that has some really good arms. And then you move down the bracket, you look at Clay. Evan Ryder beat, really, he was the big arm. He beats Notre Dame or Green and then Notre Dame in the same week. Clay finishes 6-2. They have a couple losses early in the season, but when your leadoff hitter is a sophomore, which is Ryder, and then you've got the next 4 batters in the lineup are all freshmen, it's going to take a while to get going. And it seems like, man, they've gotten going in a big way. 17 wins on the season.
No, really, really good team, good young team, a great coach, a great leader. I think that's an interesting bracket down there. I do think St. Joe's is sneaky good.
Yes.
That's a dangerous opponent down there. But, Clay, all of a sudden a favorite to play out to the district championship. Here's an interesting scenario. South Webster is by far the team to beat down there. They're the most battle tested. They play by far the best schedule.
Yeah,
The
Bernards are outstanding.
Yeah. The schedule comparison's not even close. Yeah. But here's the kicker. Let's say I'm just going to play fan. I've never got to do this in my career, right? So I'm just going to play fan for a second. Let's say Cliff starts getting nasty and he rolls through, and let's say they pull the upset. And now you get out there to the district final. You talk about the bracket opening wide open. Now all of a sudden it's anybody's chance to go to Sweet 16. But again, that requires big-time pitching performance, in my opinion. It would have to be a 1-0, 2-1 type of upset win. Mm-hmm. I just think South Webster's too much. I think when you play against the likes of Wheelersburg and Valley and Minford and Waverly and all these night in, night out, you get into this time and now you're prepared to go toe-to-toe. And I would be shocked if they don't just find a way to get on out there and survive in advance.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely as well. And then, moving on past that, Newark Catholic would await the winner of the South Webster District, while Strasburg-Franklin more than likely on the other side. So it's really tough, but at the same time, it's like, if you've got, I think if you're South Webster and you've got your 1 going.
Well, I was going to say, once you get out to the Sweet 16, you're back to the number 1. Yeah. So a lot of times you don't get to But what happens in that district championship game sometimes, it's the most bizarre thing. I've been a part of it before where it's just the most bizarre thing to where the entire game of baseball changes because you might get into the late innings and you're all the way down to your number 3 and you're trying to figure out, like, okay, how are we going to get somebody out?
Right. And that's can make it really tough overall. So real quick, who do you think – we've kind of gone over, like, a couple of questions I had was, like, most anticipated first-round matchup. I think we kind of talked probably is that Chillicothe the Athens.
I would agree with that.
Which, I mean, was like an hour ago at this point. But then toughest district, I think, I mean, really, I think that Division 4 with the Unioto Wheelersburg
I think so. It's hard for me to argue that, especially when you consider like the Logan Elm scenario in there,
and then really any of the Division 5.
Yeah, well, in the Division 5, I guess I think the teams are so good at the top. I would argue that I would be shocked to see one of them get knocked off early. I don't know if that Division 5 has the depth in the early round. Now, once you advance into the district, now it gets real. So I would go there. If you let me go into the second round, just the baseball guy in me, I'm intrigued by that McWhorter Applegate matchup. The pitching matchup there, Southeastern Manchester, that's intriguing. I'm also intrigued by middle to bottom of the SVC playing against some conference champions to just see how the SVC does stack up top to bottom.
And this is something that, it's I don't even know if they can win the first game, but if Barnhart pitches against St. Trace, where he's just pumping it, but that's what St. Trace loves, I would love to just see how that matchup would even go based on, like, they are like, when they get that gun out or they get the machine out and they're like, hey, we can ramp it up even more because this kid's throwing that hard, and just see how those guys would go against that.
That's a good point.
Yeah, because not necessarily going to be seeing that all throughout the year. And then, who do you think's our best chance to represent in Akron?
Oh wow, that's a great point. Things get really, really difficult in the Sweet 16 to Elite 8. I really like the ability of South Webster and Green there in that bottom, but I know they're going to run into some elite competition at that next level there. Man, that's a great question, John. I don't know. I mean, I think that I'd probably have to lean toward the lower divisions. Although in that Division 5, some of those teams that they get out, they've got enough 1-2 punch. That Minford Valley jumps out at me if they survive and get out of there. Lynchburg has multiple arms, because I think you're looking for a team that has the multiple arms that can go 2 and 3 deep. You think of Southeastern last year, they got themselves all the way into the middle of the Elite 8 game, and they just couldn't quite, continue to pitch at that level the rest of the way out. So I think you're looking for a team with that second or third arm. And that's probably the ones that jump out at me. Am I missing someone there? I mean,
I'm going to say my favorite is Fairfield Union, because this is why. To get to the Elite 8, they would just have to beat the Southeast. So
see, that was the other thing I was going to ask you. It's funny you say that. I was going to ask, like, I don't have the regional brackets in front of me, so one cheat code is having Southeast for Southeast to guarantee you an Elite 8.
And that could happen in Division 4 and Division 5. Okay.
So Division 5, are you saying Minford and Valley would play each other?
Yes.
So, I don't hate that winner.
No, if I think 4 and 5 have the best chance to me,
because Fairfield has depth. They're going to throw a legitimate arm out there in the Elite 8, assuming they would win.
If the right matchup comes for Green in the Sweet 16, and maybe they can sit nap, or let me look real quick. That would be the third and the fourth, so, I mean, it would be hard to bring him in. If Knapp can go in the final, I like their chance, because it would be against a team from the East, Strasburg-Franklin, which is always going to be an outstanding program, but they're not as deep as Newark Catholic would be, which is where like South Webster, where I love South Webster's team, and they were my early pick for it. They're still going to go through Newark Catholic and then someone on the other side as well. So they
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just
No, that's tough. I mean,
I think we got a chance to get a couple teams there. We had a couple teams there last year.
as you rattle off some of those programs, I guess I probably tend to lean toward more where I'm guaranteed the Southeast team in there. I'm probably leaning more toward that 4 or 5 bracket then based on just the regional matchup alone.
Yeah, and then like the thing with like a Jackson or Miami Trace is they would have to face a Watterson in the first round, and
Yeah,
then
at
it
that
would be,
level, you get into some elite pitching by the time you get to that level.
My worry, because I don't like, even though I'm a big geography guy, I didn't really fully understand that Licking Valley is in the Central. I always thought they were in the East because I mean they're in Zanesville more or less, or Newark. They actually are going to the Southwest this year in D4. I was like, I wouldn't have loved that, but the East is, beatable if you are that team coming out of the Southeast in Division 4. So I'm going to go ahead and say we didn't miss anything. But if we missed anything, let us know on the baseball side. If you are joining us on the softball side, it is because I put a timestamp at a wrong time. Overall, I feel like we went over a lot.
No, we really did. It should be a lot of fun to follow it.
Yeah, now let's jump over to softball now. And we'll go over a little bit of the tournament stuff. We did that last week. One of the things I wanted to talk about this week were some overlooked standouts when it comes to softball. Now, we talk about certain players each week. We talk about, what we've seen out of Symmes Valley. We talk about what we've seen, different players like at Piketon, different players on teams that you hear about each and every week. But these are some of the players that have had outstanding seasons, but maybe you just haven't heard about them because maybe they're not on a league champion. So I'll start just to South Point in general, but the first name that really came across for me when I was thinking about this the other day was Coda Copley. The sophomore hitting .628 on the season with 16 extra base hits, 33 stolen bases. Then she's also struck out 220 hitters for the 18-7 pointers. So just they're not going to win their league. They're going to finish behind Ironton in the OVC. So not a league champion.
Right.
So it kind of fits into that. Only a sophomore. I think we're going to hear a whole lot about her in the future as well. But then I'm like, let's see how the rest of their team's doing. Their team's ridiculous. They beat a Greenup County team, which I'll talk about a little bit later about how good that team is. They beat Greenup County a couple weeks ago, 5-0. Now that obviously Copley was in the circle there was outstanding, but they also have Kaylee Stidham, who's a junior, 540 average on the season, 15 doubles, 7 home runs, 21 stolen bases. She's knocked in 54 in his 7th in Ohio on the season. And then fellow junior Addison Copley hitting .489 with 17 extra base hits and 22 stolen bases. This is a team that I think if they get to the right matchup, this is a team that can make a lot of trouble for a lot of the teams that they're going to face.
No, I agree with that. And I think what happens is what separates them sometimes, not all times, is there's so much pressure on those 2 or 3 hitters that you're highlighting that you get them under control one night and get them to a 1-for-3 night, and you got them. You see what I'm saying? But as you say, there's going to be a lot of nights where you're going to do it in the circle, going to do it in the batter's box, where it's just that's the X factors when they can impact it on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and then they can impact it in a major way, as you said, on both sides of the ball. So we'll get more into them a little bit later on, just because of just overall what their kind of outlook looks to be in general. Just I was going to real quick pull them up, and now of course they're going to be on this side, and I missed them. All right, I'm not worried about it right now. So just overall, this is a South Point team that I think is going to be really interesting to follow throughout the postseason. Then let's stay in the OVC, we'll stay in the OVC. Gallia Academy's Ava Angel is hitting 650 on the season, 14 home runs on the year for the Blue Angels. And then teammate Chloe Bennett is hitting 534 with 33 stolen bases. And to me, in a sport that relies on strikeouts so much, this is what stood out to me. She struck out one time in 99 plate appearances.
Yeah.
Like, and you're facing really, really talented pitching down there in the OVC and the different teams that they play. Just how insane is that to only strike out one time in 99 plate appearances?
Well, it's such an important factor of a fundamental of just put the ball in play, especially when you can run a little bit. Put the ball in play and put pressure on the defense because, yeah, the error here or there may not help the batting average, but at the end of the day, you're trying to win, right? So I don't care how, as a coach, I don't care how you get on. I just assume you be on base at the end of your bat, right?
Exactly.
Especially if you can run.
Yeah, and the ability to run is going to make them, really difficult team. And South Point is in Division 4. That's where.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was trying to help you out, and I'm like, maybe South Point doesn't play in the tournament. I had no idea they were that big. Did you?
No, I did not. So I know they
Yeah.
used
So
to be.
they're the 4 seed there in the 4-5 matchup. They're in Jackson's bracket. So
Yeah, so that's. Yeah, I know. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Maybe that's where I was like, oh, we'll talk about that a little bit later, and thought about it when I made my notes.
I was the same way you. I clicked on like 8 brackets because I was like, well, they're not 4, are they? Oh, well, yeah, they are.
Yeah, and then so Gaia would also be 4, correct?
Now,
Yeah,
that one
Gaia-
doesn't surprise
yeah.
me as much. Yeah.
Gaia plays Hillsborough. And then let's stay in Division 4. There we go. There's the segue. Fairfield Union's Ella Harmon is ridiculous.
Yeah.
James Madison commit is 4th in Ohio in home runs with 16. She's knocked in 52 on the season. She's batting 600. She's committed to James Madison. Like, for a team that's frankly not very good, I just can't believe she gets pitched to at all. 16 home runs, 52 ribbies on the year is just unbelievable when you know that they could probably pitch around her a little bit as well.
That's a fair point. I'm not going to pretend to know the dynamic of the lineup or some of the games they've played, but when you look at team record and then you look at those individual numbers, I mean that's a pretty fair comment.
Yeah, when you have a player going to a Division I school hitting home runs, there's no way to mess with that average or with that at all. Like, those are home runs.
Right.
Like, it's just
Right.
It's just showing her ability, and if they can get a little more depth of their lineup, depth of their pitching, that could make them a lot more interesting team to follow next season. And she's also hitting home runs against really good teams too. I mean, she hit a couple against Adena the other day. She hit a couple against Logan Elm. She's hitting them off of elite pitchers.
They play Vinton County in a 7-10 game to get to Logan Elm. Who knows? A bat like that, like you said, if you don't go with the game plan, a bat like that in a 7-10 matchup could be the difference.
Yep, and could impact the game in a major way. And then let's stay in Division 4. Logan Elm's Sadie Binkley. She's one that you think of as a pitcher because of being an elite pitcher, getting them to the Final Four as a sophomore. She's closing in on 600 career strikeouts, but this year at the plate, she is hitting 600 with 23 extra base hits for the 16-8 Braves. She went 2 for 2 in their state semifinal game a couple of years ago. Just overall, just an elite talent.
Yeah, it really is. We've watched her play in other sports there too. Just an extreme competitive kid, and that's the trait that goes sport to sport. Obviously, your skill set might be different in different sports. The one thing that doesn't change, John, in my experience, is that competitive juice, that ability to perform at your best when your best is required. And I think some of those things in the postseason can really be on display.
Yeah, and these are players, once again, that we're not saying aren't appreciated. It's just maybe because teams not winning the league, they're not necessarily being looked at as closely as maybe we would think, or maybe if there were places all along the way covering throughout.
And in that bracket, I just wanted to clarify, because I was talking about Ella Harmon in that 7-10 matchup, but then you were also talking about the Ava Angel. Same way here. You look down here, they're in a 6-11 matchup against Hillsborough, and then they're trying to get to the Circleville game. Again, these bats with one swing of the bat could change, with the long ball, the way the ball's flying out of these softball fields this spring, the home run could be a big, big factor in some of these games.
And Hillsborough is another one that was like an Eastern Brown. They started off 0-12 on the season. They are 9-15 now.
Yeah.
They've won 9 of their last 12 games. I mean, they're a team that.
Well, you think of what they accomplished a year ago. A lot of pride. So you knew the program wasn't going to just quit on it, right?
Right.
So I'm sure they had to replace quite a few key pieces, and here they are.
Yeah, you get to a state championship game last year, and obviously you had to replace some outstanding players in there, and it took a little bit of time, but it seems like, really, if you look at their schedule, Lynchburg, who's got a player we're going to talk about in a minute, Adena, Jackson, Waverly, who's got some nice pieces, Miami Trace a couple of times, Peebles, who's an outstanding team, Ironton, Chillicothe, and then your first wins against a Leesburg team that's really good. I mean, it's just, it just took a while, and then once they did it, seemingly they've kind of remembered who they are and why they got to the state championship game last year. Because it was not just, it was very senior heavy, but not just senior heavy. So now let's look at a couple more. We're going to go to Southeastern. I kind of highlighted Jade Turner here. Sophomore hitting .500 on the season, 33 stolen bases. She also has only struck out once in 99 plate appearances. This is a Southeastern team I really like, and here's why. Classmate Kylie Williams, she's pitched them to an 18-7 record. She struck out 190 hitters on the season, but she's also hitting .386 and has 34 RBIs on the year. And then the two batters that hit ahead of Turner in their lineup, you got I'll start with Gracie Brown hitting .484, 29 steals on the season. Allie Fisher, who hits second, hitting .537 with 30 steals on the year. Then you got Dylan Skaggs, Lydia Williams to give a little bit of protection in the lineup for Turner, and Turner has really benefited from all of that.
Well, they really have, and when you think of the speed of Turner and Brown and Fisher, you're knocking on the door of 100 steals there. Mm-hmm. So you get the old get them on, get them over, get them in, and then as Williams gets better and better in the circle, that kind of makes them a dangerous type of team, because where in the tournament, if you start to face some better pitching as you advance round by round, sometimes it's the small ball and the speed game. Get a ball and play on the ground, like you said, the low strikeout total, right? So as the pitching gets better, get a ball and play, put pressure on the defense, get on, maybe bunt, maybe steal, whatever it is, create some offense and give yourself a chance to maybe compete with some of those better teams.
The SVC won a state championship in 2014 with Westfall of just get them on and get them over. Yeah. And it took them 14 innings, but they were able to finally do it. They get their first hit of the game after you get on a bunt where they have an error, and then they bunt the girl to second. Then they finally get their first hit, win the state championship, and it was 100% all right, we just got to make something happen because we ain't getting hits. We ain't getting hits, so you might as well try to put the ball in play and see what happens. And that's what I think this Southeastern team definitely can do in that Division 6. So, and then our last player that I really wanted to highlight, Lynchburg-Clay's Noelle Barnhill, senior, having her best offensive season. She's hitting .545 on the season, 20 extra base hits. They're 11-9. She's going to cross the 600 career strikeout mark this season. Very similar career to Sadie Binkley when you look at, you think of her pitcher first, but also an elite hitter as well.
No, it really is. And the Shack has kind of quietly had some pretty good arms there in terms of the strikeout total this year. That'll be interesting to see if that follows through into the tournament or if more teams are able to put them in play. But no, you're right. That's an impressive line when these young ladies are able to do it in the circle and with the bat. I mean, that's really carrying your team, because again, in softball, it's you in the circle every night.
Yes. And then actually I did want to include, because we got one more, we got a record as well for Adena. Adena's Joe Jett broke the Adena record for home runs, 14 on the season for her. Only a sophomore, as we said a couple weeks ago, she hit 2 last year and hit about 250. Now she's hitting over 500 as a sophomore, 14 home runs. And as I really enjoyed the Coach Jadwin interview last week on the Coach's Call-In show, as he really stated, not a real big long ball guy. They play a lot more small ball, but man, he's got a thumper there in Joe Jett. And then you've got Josie Mallow and Marley Halcomb that can also go deep. And then you've got a lot of speed and two really good pitchers in Bossert and Cottrell. That's an Adena team that's got some really nice pieces.
You know, when you think of underappreciated, what's funny is she might be the single best softball player in the league, Marley Halcomb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, with Jets long ball total, and rightfully so. I mean, goodness, she's putting up unbelievable totals with the home run totals. But you look at Halcomb, it's almost like, you know, she just accidentally gets 2 hits a night. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where, you know, just such a consistent presence in the lineup, and then the athleticism and the ability to defend and do all those things. That is a dangerous team. You know what I mean? Obviously, Piketon has been a team in the SVC that was really good, but Adena, by the end of the year, really proven to maybe really hit a stride here. And they've got 2 or 3 kids in the lineup that can certainly change a game in one swing.
Halcomb hitting 564 on the year. That's kind of what you like.
That's the point I'm making is, like, we take for granted, like, oh yeah, she might be the best player. You know what I mean? Like, it's the and obviously some Piketon kids would have something to say about that. But I'm just saying, when it comes to just individual, take pitcher out of it and just look at individual player, offense, defense, you certainly would put Halcomb up there against anybody.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. So some outstanding players in Frankfort, and we'll get to why they are so dangerous here in just a minute when we get more into our tournament preview. So speaking of our tournament preview, let's start with, you know, we talked about it a little bit last week. Let's go a little bit more in depth of it this week. So in Division 3, Chillicothe gets the 1, Sheridan the 2. I think they look like they're probably going to be the favorites to kind of move forward in, you know, their area, because you still got to play against the East coming out as well. So it's kind of a weird setup. So just a second, I had it.
Chillicothe would play
Yeah.
Steubenville Tri-Valley winner if they survive the Unioto Miami Trace winner.
Yeah, so Chillicothe would play the winner of Unioto Miami Trace. That would be on the 20th. I believe that would be at Logan. So think about that. If that's a
At Logan.
Yeah, Unioto and Chillicothe, I'm sure those people handle that very well on having to go to Logan. But would be a fun matchup over there. And then, as you said, play the winner of Steubenville and Tri-Valley. As we've talked about, this Chillicothe team, a league champion in the FAC. They've been outstanding throughout the year. Just, you know, Rittinger's an outstanding pitcher, but they've also got some big time thump in their lineup as well.
No question, and a lot of athleticism. A pretty deep lineup, pretty complete lineup. That was on display in that final week of FAC play when they really their season was on the line in terms of a chance to share a title, and down to their last 4 or 5 outs, and they were able to spark a big time rally and get back in front. But no, they would be advancing out. That the Steubenville winner would come to Ohio University there, and that's where they would play. Steubenville Tri-Valley winner. Chillicothe comes out of that.
Yeah, and then the other side, which would be Sheridan playing Washington and then Athens playing Marietta, the winners there would play on the 20th over at Logan after that Chillicothe and Unioto Miami Trace winner. And then the winners of that would go on to face most likely Dover, who is 20-0 on the season, 5th in the state according to Max Preps. They've given up 13 runs.
Yeah, I've had some softball people when I tried to ask, like, you know, what to expect out of the East over there. They felt like the Chillicothe side of it, not that it would be easy, had a more favorable opportunity, because they mentioned that the Dover team was really legit.
Yeah, that Dover team is outstanding. Sheridan outstanding as well. So wouldn't surprise me if we see Chillicothe and Sheridan being the teams to play for the district titles over there. And then if you look out a little bit as well, the 1 seed out of the Central that would play on the Sheridan side would be Bloom Carroll. So that's a team that many teams in the Southeast are familiar with, at least.
Sure.
But still an outstanding program are the Bulldogs, which technically are in our coverage area because we cover their league, but we don't really cover them.
Yeah. Well, did we call their basketball game earlier this year? Boys?
We did call them to start the year against Chillicothe, and that's when I think maybe there was some fool's gold on how bad they're going to be because of how unbelievable that Chillicothe defense was.
No, but that team, if you followed that, now I know I'm getting off topic here, but they ended up being a very good team.
Yeah. And, man, if you just watched that first night, you would have been like, how is this team any good? Because that defensive performance was unbelievable. So let's move to sorry to get kind of off topic, but let's move over to Division 4. The 1 seed is going to be the Jackson Iron Women. And, they're the top seed. Serenity Taylor, an outstanding pitcher in the circle. They've got outstanding depth throughout their lineup. Just what are your kind of thoughts on this Jackson team?
Oh, just complete. I think they're so athletic defensively. I think they don't always make the routine play, but I see an athleticism that can range and sometimes make the plus play. Offense is really complete. I was impressed with their ability to go at all levels of their lineup. Obviously, the power at the top, but really throughout the middle of the lineup, you saw a lot of people that could carry them. So yeah, I like them at the top of this bracket quite a bit. And then I've learned today that South Point is Division 4.
Yeah,
and they're going to be in that 4 or 5. They'd be a favorite to advance out and be the next round opponent for Jackson, assuming the seeds hold.
Yeah, if you look at Jackson, you got Maddie Wright with 8 home runs.
Maddie Wright's outstanding.
Lily Eberts with 7, and then Izzy Swisher with 6. I mean, you're getting some thump there.
And what's crazy about that number, and I guess it goes with the spring, is all of those young ladies have the pop to hit it out of the park, but I don't even kind of, in all my study of Jackson, when I was getting ready to call them earlier this year, I didn't consider them a home run hitting team. It just shows you those 5 tools of baseball or softball that we talk about. That's a good way to describe Jackson. When I say complete, they've got a lot of 4 and 5 tool players all over that lineup.
Well, then you got some clutch players at the bottom of the lineup with Brindley Smalley was huge in that game over at VA Memorial Stadium. KJ Worsham was outstanding defensively. Lexi Perry. It's just, Abby Barnett as another one. Aaliyah Barnett. It's a team that when you look at just 1 through 9 is outstanding.
Well, when you hit 7, 8, 9 for a team like Jackson or Chillicothe, you're probably not hitting 7, 8, 9 for a lot of other teams around the area.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. So I think I was thinking probably a pretty big favorite, but then you look at like a Waverly team that when you come in, they've got 5 different players that have hit 3 or more home runs. So if you get some really good pitching out of Lexi Smith, who's put up some big strikeout numbers in her career, Addie Hudnall's got 9 home runs on the season for Waverly. They've played an outstanding conference, so they've faced really good pitching all throughout the year. They've had some issues with run. Like holding down teams as far as run prevention. Man, I love that term like 3 weeks ago, and I couldn't think of it right there. But they've had an issue with run prevention, but overall they've got some really nice pieces. And then at the bottom of that bracket, you've got Logan Elm, you've got Sadie Binkley, you've got a lot of experience as far as a team that got to the Final Four 2 years ago. They've won a lot in a lot of different sports as well. We've talked about a little bit of that South Point team. Warren's got some nice pieces. They played a tight game with Piketon the other day at Piketon. And then, Vinton County, more than capable. Fairfield Union's got some pop. Guy Academy's got pop. Hillsborough we've seen is starting to come along at the end of the year. And then Circleville comes in a little bit over 500, but they're the 3 seed, and they're a team that you can never sleep on.
Yeah, I mean, the Circleville team, I was going to say dangerous, but I guess they're not with a bye. They're in the 3 seed. It's not like they're under the radar by any stretch of the imagination. It's always intriguing to see those nearby rivals play for that 3rd time in the postseason. That's what you could get with Logan Elm Circleville. I'm sure that would have a little bit of intensity to it.
Just a bit.
And so that's interesting. But another example of where the 1 seed matters. Like let a Logan Elm Circleville beat up on each other. And if you're Jackson, that's not to say that Waverly and McClain and South Point and Warren aren't good softball teams. It just means that I'd rather be that path rather than watching those other teams beat the heck out of one another.
Yeah, that would make things a little more interesting. And then if they would get out, they would play what looks like would be the one from the east, which would be Beaver. Can't really say I know a ton there, but Licking Valley out of the Central, I think, would be where the ultimate, the big gun would be on that side. So let's move to Division 5, and surprise, surprise, Wheelersburg is the 1 seed there. I believe they are in the Southeast 3.
Yeah, 3.
Yeah, so they're in the Southeast 3. They they lost to Sheridan last week. They've lost to Greenup County. They've upped their schedule. They always up their schedule, but a few more losses this year. So maybe they look like they could possibly be a little more gettable, but I'm not really 100% sure that they're gettable because of the depth of their lineup, the athletes they put out, especially in this district. They would face the winner of a Northwest and Westfall. Westfall really struggling with run prevention, but man, they've put up some runs.
They can.
Northwest has been solid, but not great throughout the year. And then you move on. Wellston and Eastern Brown both have more than capable arms, so that could be an interesting possible district final game down at OU on the 22nd. But I think this is ultimately Wheelersburg's district to win.
I would agree. Yeah, it's obviously going to take a really elite arm and some really good defense to put yourself into a late inning chance to get them. But you're right. I mean, I think Wellston and Eastern have proven this year with some quality wins, but that's a whole different level going toe-to-toe with Wheelersburg in a district championship format.
Yeah, then let's go over to the Southeast 2, where Meigs is the 1 seed. They just lost their second game of the season to Vinton County the other day, but they're going to win the TVC Ohio. They're the top seed. They have an outstanding pitching combination of Natalie Good, and then you've got the freshman Brooklyn Roush in the circle. Then you've got some nice offensive depth with Good, Bella Roush, Ava Horn, and Aubrey Newell. Horn and Newell each got their 100th career hit in the last couple of weeks as well. So, I mean, they've got a lot of experience, but this is a pretty interesting bracket, in my opinion.
You highlighted some numbers there in the first segment of softball, and I mentioned this last week, and the more I look at this bracket this week, it continues to jump out at me. I like Southeastern out of the bottom down there. They're the 6th seed. I think they have some really favorable matchups. Now, again, North Adams, if that seed holds, that's going to be some good young talent, some good young arms, but Don't sleep on the Lady Panthers down there out of the bottom. Obviously, Meigs has been really, really good here at the top. There's the 2 seed, well earned with the regular season they've had. But that Southeastern North Adams matchup has a chance to be pretty good here, and the winner that comes out of there will be a tough out.
North Adams has a pitching combination of Carly Garrison and Marnie Toll.
Yes.
They just don't walk people. 13 walks on the season.
Well, that'll be
between
important against the speed of Southeastern
Yes.
and trying to get them out.
At least make them put the ball in play and give your team a chance. Freshman Chloe Armstrong with 12 home runs on the season as well for North Adams. We talked about that outstanding group for Southeastern earlier, but also don't really sleep on Colgrove. They seemingly, they're in that top half, which they would have to win to go play Meigs. But last year they had Abby Deeds in the circle. She was outstanding. She went on to be the trying to think of the name of the conference at this point. I just announced it for weeks. The River States Conference Newcomer of the Year for Shawnee State goes over and is an elite college pitcher immediately. Well, it takes some time to replace that, but they've been able to do so. Izzy Kitts, Riley Bear have got them back to 500. They're a team that they got to the regional last year. They've got some experience. It wouldn't shock me to see them play this Meigs team really competitive and make things a little hairy late in that matchup if they get there.
No, I think that's fair because, again, Meigs they've been battle tested with a lot of close games, and to their credit, they've won those. But again, you play enough close games, and it just takes a bad call, a bad, pop, whatever it may be, to be the difference.
Yeah, and it's with how hard the ball can get hit at times, it can go a lot of crazy ways. And then let's jump over to the teams that would go to the Southwest, which would be the Piketon bracket, which is an outstanding bracket when you look at it from top to bottom here. Piketon, the SVC champions, have been outstanding. You've got largely known as the offensive team, but Sadie Childers, a junior, is 14-0 on the season in the Circle. Really good defensively. They've gotten better and better. But offensively, you got Aubrey Heath, Jalen Forbes, Addie Blakeman, all with some big-time pop. Briar Penwell with some great speed. Reese Shanks with some great speed. 1 through 9, they can hit. 7 of their players have multi-home runs on the year. They're just an outstanding offense. They've started to face some really good pitchers in the non-league, and they've figured out some ways to win as well because they lost a couple 4-3 games early. What can make things really interesting, though, one of those 4-3 losses was to Portsmouth, who they could face in the district semifinal.
Yeah, I know you highlighted that last week. That is intriguing. I mean, we talked about Wellston a second ago. That was one of them. The now Portsmouth. What I like about this bracket, as good as Piketon is, this bracket here has some depth to it. Like there's some games. You go all the way down through here. Ironton's got a nice team. That Adena Zane Trace matchup, Adena's a heavy favorite, but again, you don't love playing the SVC opponent who knows you a little bit.
It's one, I think 3 out of 4.
Right. So they're starting to find themselves a little bit. But Adena is one of those teams where it's not going to be easy, but man, they become a dangerous team. And I guess if you're just a fan of the SVC, wouldn't hurt your feelings to see Piketon and Adena round 3.
Yeah, but man, it's going to be tough for Piketon, or not Piketon, but Adena to get through that Ironton team.
No doubt about it. Yeah, Ironton is probably would be somewhat of a heavy favorite.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just saying that, just out of the love of the league. Now, Ironton's a team when you look at who they beat. Yeah, I think some people would tell you they might even be the favorite in the bracket. Right. Now, if you're Piketon, you take a little offense to that, but a lot of people I've talked to think Ironton's that good.
Yeah, they went to 8 innings with Wheelersburg a couple of weeks ago. They've played a really tough schedule, so they have a few more losses. But when you got a player going to Duke and Camille Martin with hitting .519 on the year with 12 home runs, and then you've got Ava Beal in the Circle who struck out 240 batters, they're going to have a chance. Really good defensively, really good in the Circle, playing that really tight schedule. That's where the thump for Adena or Piketon would need to step up in a big way because
that's the matchup.
The amount of base runners.
You've talked about it all year. Piketon and Adena are going to have to pitch and defend to play at this level, and it starts right there with that Ironton game. I think that's going to be a big test.
Yeah, you've got for Adena, you got Allie Bossert, Addie Cottrell, who have been really good and getting better pitching wise.
Right,
and then Sadie Childers and Peyton Day have been really good for Piketon, especially as of late, and that's what's going to make that district so much fun to watch. And then they get to go to the Southwest and give a chance to maybe get 2 teams to the Final Four.
Hard to imagine, even in tournament, hard to imagine a Piketon or Adena special run without the long ball playing a role in it.
Yes, I agree.
Even though I think pitching and defense is going to be the deciding factor for them. Somewhere along the lines, you got to feel like they're going to hit the ball the ballpark.
Yeah, and then that Southwest is absolutely loaded, but you give yourself a chance no matter what if going over to that side as well. So let's move over to Division 6. In Division 6, I think the depth of pitching in Division 6 is going to be really interesting as well. Because really, if you look at it, Valley, Eastern Pike, Peebles, Fairfield, Lynchburg all have outstanding arms. Really solid offenses as well. But I think West, who's the 3 seed, has the best offense out of that group as well. So that makes it really, to me, 6 of those teams could make a run and ultimately, make some noise.
No question about it. I was talking about this last week that Really like the Portsmouth West team in that bottom bracket. And then at the top bracket, obviously Lucasville Valley, the 1 seed. But keep an eye on Fairfield and that 5 spot there. You know, the ability to pitch and defend. I think they're going to be tough here in the first round. Now you could have a Peebles Fairfield matchup there in the second round. Obviously, those two teams know each other well. But I just some things I've looked at statistically. Fairfield trends in the right direction for me. I'd keep an eye on them in that bracket.
Yeah, keep an eye out on them for sure. And then as you go further out, even Manchester. Manchester really hits the ball.
Good pitcher.
They've got a good pitcher who throws it pretty hard, and that can cause some issues. But I really like what Eastern's done this year against Symmes Valley. I know Symmes Valley is a division
that's
lower,
a good point.
But to me, it's shown that they are ready for prime time, and it's not just doing it against a weaker schedule. It's giving themselves a chance, and I think that's why they're going to ultimately have a chance to play for a district championship. But really, I think this Division 6 is got a chance to be really fun.
No, I agree. There's some depth to it there, which you don't always see in the lower division.
And then it looks to be like out of the Central would be West Jefferson. And here's how good West Jefferson is this year. They have wins over Taze Valley, who Taze Valley is year in, year out one of the top programs in the state, regardless of division. And then they also beat Greenup County. Greenup County does have a loss to South Point, which obviously we talked about South Point and how loaded they are. Greenup County has beaten Notre Dame twice, Ironton, and Chesapeake. And that's a team West Jefferson just recently beat. So if you get out, you're going to have to face someone really good regardless.
Yeah.
But that sounds like a team that is more than battle tested.
Oh, no question about it. And I guess that's why you do that, right? You want to put yourself out there. The softball record, we've talked about it before because of the one main pitcher. Mm-hmm. The softball full record gives you a little bit of indication of who these teams are. So I think that I don't know if I'm right on that. My mind seems to pay more attention to that overall record, where in baseball, I look to study that arm a little bit more.
Yeah, and these pitchers across are some big-time arms with, Quickle, Barnhill.
Really like
Musser,
Quickle in that bracket.
Yeah, Musser, Eastern Pike's got a pair, and then Christmas as well. It's just a very pitching heavy, and then you've got West, who last year showed, even with not elite pitching, their ability to hit the ball and hit the ball out of the ballpark. Cook was hit for the cycle last year in the district final and really carried them as a freshman. And now as a sophomore, she's one of the top players in this district as well. So, just keep an eye out on some of these players. So let's go to Division 7 for our kind of wrap-up here. I've got a couple questions here.
Okay.
Can Notre Dame repeat as state champions? I think more than capable.
Sure.
Is this the season Symmes Valley gets back to the Final Four for the first time since 2005?
Where does the bracket come out in the Sweet 16 here? Do they play each other?
They would not.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So
it could
we've already got a result. I just clicked on it and just had a result. So Symmes Valley would face looks like Caldwell or maybe Connaughton Valley. Connaughton Valley's the 4, but Connaughton Valley just played someone really tight that I saw earlier, and I think it might have been West Jefferson. So they're more than capable. But then Notre Dame's side, that would feature Strasburg Franklin, which is
they've always been good too. So no, that's interesting because obviously you would love for our area to get both of them out there to let them battle it straight up to see who goes to the Final Four.
Yeah, it'd be outstanding to see if it could happen. But then my last question.
Okay.
Will Southern or Clay be able to play spoiler because of their outstanding pitching?
Well, I think the answer on the first of all, let's start with the Clay side. Again, when you go toe to toe, conference takes on a whole different level because I think what happens with conference is you face them enough to where, okay, they're good, but some of the intimidation goes away, in my opinion, from the standpoint of if you're that good. Now, I'm not saying they don't intimidate the bottom half of their league every year, like, oh gosh, we got to get played Notre Dame.
Right.
But when you're Clay and you're trying to knock on that door, I think you would welcome that opportunity. Yeah, let's get another shot here to go do that. So, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, could they? Yes. Same way with Racing Southern. I think they can. Good pitching in the circle, and it always
Very
gives you a
athletic.
chance.
Yeah.
And they are an athletic group. But the thing about Symmes Valley is the depth of their lineup. Like when you get in a tournament setting, sometimes it's about, okay, can we get these 2 or 3 hitters out? That Symmes Valley lineup, they just leave the yard at any time in their order. Forget just, starting a rally. I mean, all the way up and down the lineup, they can just hit the ball at the ballpark. So yes, they can, but I don't know. That Notre Dame and Symmes Valley are the types of teams that I would predict to get upset,
Right.
just because I think they're pretty complete.
Well, just going on Clay real quick, they're close to 20 wins, closing in on it. Sophomore, very sophomore heavy. Heidi Smith, Elin Shaw lead them offensively. Shaw and Elena Shepard also kind of split time in the circle. Both have been really good.
Yeah.
But then you look at Symmes Valley, Brenna Tibbs, obviously outstanding in the circle. Marley Ferguson, Macy Bland, Casey Thompson, Lydia Saunders. You can go on and on.
I
and
really
on.
like Symmes Valley, which makes me probably, maybe I didn't talk highly enough of Eastern back in the D6 bracket based on that. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, that Racine matchup's interesting.
Yeah, they for Symmes Valley, they've got that really good mix of pitching, power, speed, defense. That, to me, would say that they could break through. But, as you've mentioned, Notre Dame, you've got Rush returning in the circle. Wins the state championship last year. You got Swords Power. I mean, she's going to Ball State for a reason. And then you've got big game experience. Entler, Ford, Schaefer, Lyon, Rush again. And then you have Bach. You have all these players that have played at the highest level, and then their non-league schedule is so talented and tough that they're not going to be shaken by whoever they play. So if they got to play a really good team in the Sweet 16, they're fine with it. They don't-
Like a lot of times what we think of it as a big game, they're looking at it just like the next game. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
it's just
Like,
a game. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and that's kind of. I talked to it was Ford and Schaefer after one of the volleyball matches this year, and they're down 2-0, come back and win in 5, and they're just like, yeah, we just we've played a lot of big games, so we know that like what it takes to keep going through those games. So that's, to me, is like they don't get rattled. They just don't get impacted by the moment. The moment's not going to get them, and maybe that ultimately can be why they would get back to Akron. So, I kind of want to say go to that same thing that we did in baseball.
Okay.
Who do you think would be? What do you think's maybe the toughest district?
I don't know that I can really pick one out top to bottom. I'll give you segments. I think that Circleville Logan Elm side of that one is really, really tough. I think the Piketon bracket in Division 5 has some incredible depth with Ironton lurking down there, a team like Adena lurking. I guess if you made me pick top to bottom, I'd say that one. But I'm really intrigued by the Circleville Logan Elm. Is that the Jackson bracket that they would come out?
Yes.
Am I saying that right? Yeah. So I mean that one.
Well, then Jackson would have to beat like a South Point or Warren.
That's right. So I would say those are probably the ones that jump out at me, because I think even though there's a little bit more depth than maybe get credit for Division 6 and Division 7, I still think those teams are so elite when you think of Notre Dame, when you think of Symmes Valley, some of those teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So my pick would be that Piketon Division 5, but also that Jackson, just the Division 4 in general, I think has got to be got a chance to be outstanding. Maybe most anticipated early round matchup.
Well, I mean, depending on how early you're talking,
Right.
I guess that Circleville Logan Elm would be right up there again. I would pay close attention to the Southeastern bracket that I was referencing earlier. Let me pull that one back up there. That was the Let's see here. Is that the 5? Yes. So the North Adams Southeastern. That
Yes.
would be one. That would be one that's fairly early. I know it's a semifinal, but that would be one that jumps out at me early because I think that has the chance to be a good matchup this year, but a preview with those pitchers of something that we might be following in years to come as well.
Yeah, that could go from a semi to a final.
Sure.
As soon as next year.
Right.
Even. So I think that's a really good one to pick as well. And then who do you think's the best chance to represent the Southeast in Akron?
Well, I mean, it's hard not to go with the obvious. Your Wheelersburg, your Notre Dame, the teams like that. If you're trying to maybe pick out a sleeper, you start to look at some teams. The problem with going into the higher division is what waits on them
Right.
in the regional. Like I really like this Chillicothe, this Jackson team, so forth. The problem with saying those types of teams, when you're asking me Final Four, man, they are going to run into some elite arms in the circle. And that's what I'm just not sure. So I think for me, it probably stays in the D5 down. And that's why I have a tendency to lean more toward your Wheelersburg, your Notre Dame, those types of teams.
Yeah, I would say, to me, Wheelersburg, Symmes Valley, Notre Dame. I think Symmes Valley's got an excellent chance this year to kind of break through. But I think I wouldn't be shocked if it wasn't Symmes Valley against Notre Dame in the Elite Eight, just because of how talented Strasburg Franklin always is, and what the East does bring in that small division. But it would be very exciting if it was Notre Dame against Symmes Valley with a chance to go to the Final Four.
Do we know Division 6, our Southeast teams go opposite of one another?
Yes.
So, because the team that we haven't probably, as far as being a top seed, we probably haven't talked enough about Lucasville Valley.
Yeah.
That would be another sleeper group that, like, hey, don't forget about us. We are the top seed. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
they got a
That
little
type of
power.
thing.
They got elite pitching.
Yep.
They're a team that, I think they would go opposite. So they would get the team out of the East, which would be Monroe Central or Garraway. And Garraway just gave up 5 runs in their opening round matchup. So, I mean, against a 10 seed. So maybe that makes them more susceptible to a low scoring game, which, Valley definitely could get them into.
Right.
But yeah, keep an eye out on them for sure as well.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Like I said, those higher divisions, I think we're going to be represented well in the regional. It's just, man, when they get there, it's going to be, those are some tough levels to get past at those higher divisions.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So we've talked a lot.
Yep.
Shocker.
Yeah.
We got at least 2 more shows to go. We'll see
Okay.
after that. And we may not do Sunday next week. We'll see.
Okay.
I was thinking I was looking at something, and there's a reason why we may not go Sunday. But
Well, you some levels you get into graduation depending on who.
That's what it was,
Depending on who you might need to go see and so
yeah,
forth.
well,
and some
you're
of the parties. And
just
so forth.
slightly administrative.
Yeah.
So that was literally this morning pulling in his quote. It's like, oh, Shayne might not be available on Sunday.
Yeah.
So we may go back to another Tuesday episode next week. We'll see. You'll kind of find out when it kind of drops.
Well, and by this time next week, you're basically eliminating half the state in softball, and then baseball be getting geared up.
ready to go. So I don't think there's anything on Monday next week. So it wouldn't make sense. Wouldn't really hurt to do it on Monday.
Right.
So we will see. But check out Haynesville Healthcare Coaches Call-In Show on Sunday. I won't guarantee that it's going to be ridiculous, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be ridiculous. I think we're looking to have some athletes in as well that night, so should be a pretty fun show. I think that's going to be the last one of the season, just because by the time the next week would come, a lot of people would be eliminated. And
Hey, I'll be the first to admit that the show. I love sports, so I'll listen for the coaches as well. But you at least have my attention on what might be next.
yeah, what we'll see. And I really like the Sunday version of it. Now in the fall, when we're going to be doing it during Sunday Night Football, we'll see how many coaches are going to be excited about calling in then. But
Sure.
will be easier than if Coach Woodward has a 2-hour bus ride back, and he's just trying to call us on the road, and it'd be easier than doing that.
Yeah.
So look forward to that. We have some stuff planned for the summer. We'll kind of see. We're going to use this space in the summer.
I'm anxious to get going back into the ballpark and calling games. I know that, the VA schedule's been a little bit away from high school here for a week or two, but I'm anxious to get back. I think we have some terrific games there at the VA, and then you and I haven't even ruled out maybe going elsewhere.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty fun to look at, but we'll see. And we got 2 tripods here. I guess we have 3 cameras because we got one on the floor that we may be able to use at a different location as well. But we just got to kind of see and seek it out, and maybe we employ Dewey again to try to make him do some stuff. I don't know. He's I haven't looked to see how they're doing right now, but the Bears have played really well today. 1-12-1 in their opener. Yeah,
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, really nice start for them, and I don't think they had a whole lot of the local guys playing because I think that's kind of some different guys have earned their way in from around the state.
Right.
So outstanding teams, and really looking forward to seeing how Denison does at the next level coming up as well. Some of the teams that played out at the VA carry themselves really well, and Denison's one of those. There's reason why you celebrate, you root for a 40-1 team. Even if they don't have a whole lot of local guys, you're like, they're an hour away. They carry themselves the right way, and fans are nice. And then some other schools come in that are an hour away and don't in that same conference. So,
all right,
I mean, there's some very strict rules, and some people don't abide by them.
That's right.
So, yeah, that's why we like Shawnee and Denison. So because they do. You got anything else?
That's all the wisdom I have to share.
Yeah, kids, finish your schoolwork. Don't finish the school year on a downer. Finish on a high note. So just check
advice.
out. Yeah, we should have a lot of interviews throughout this week with the tournament starting. As we said, Haynesville Healthcare Coaches College Show next week. We got at least 2 more weeks of us here in overtime, and then some stuff in the summer as well. So for Shayne Combs, I'm John Bruce. You've been watching SOSA Overtime, presented by Perfection One. Have a great rest of your week.